Terry will begin the work session now.
Okay. If the council's ready, we can review the agenda, and I'll address any questions you may have. If we start with item 6, licenses, we do have a couple of licenses for the council to consider. One is for the Ragnar Relay, which is a renewal. I believe they've done that twice now, and we will have someone here, or we probably do have the applicant here, to answer any questions the council may have. Item B under licenses is a victualling license for Willie's Place on High Street, and again, the applicant should be here to address any questions that the council may have in that regard. The rest of the licenses are all consent agenda, unless anyone has any questions on those. Item 7, public hearings. We have 2 public hearings this evening. The first is item A, which is relative to the proposed amendments for the town code, property tax exemptions for elderly persons. And the council will note that at the last council meeting there was a detailed memorandum from the Director of Administrative Services detailing the rationale behind the recommendation, and Luke Murray will be able to provide the council with that detail with a few slides this evening prior to the public hearing, if the council would like to have that. You will see that item B is a public hearing relative to the adoption of the town's final FY 22-23 budget. Again, this is the final budget adoption and public hearing. I'll provide a couple of slides for the council's information and the public's information as a reminder of the budget as it was adopted on March 21st, the preliminary budget by the council. Moving on to communications, item E, you have a communication from the town of Charlestown in support of House Bill H 8055, which relates to CRMC and a definition of the recognizable high tide line for the public's rights and privileges to the shore. This bill basically establishes a high water mark for public access, and the description is 10 feet landward of the high tide line. That is for consideration of the council, whether you wish to support and or refer to the Waterfront Commission. That's the purview of the council. I will remind the council that obviously the town has many public access points along the coast, and the Waterfront Advisory Commission is very involved with ensuring that those rights-of-ways and public access points are inspected and remain open, and they're in that process now with the Harbor Management Plan in conjunction with the Planning Department with all of the public access inventories. Moving on to item G. This is a letter from Henry Thayer, the Vice Chair of the Economic Development Committee. As you recall, the council referred a recommendation from the CONCOM to amend the town's plastic reduction ordinance to include plastic nip bottles. The EDC did take that up. They provided a letter to the council which indicated that they would be in support of amending the plastic reduction ordinance. I have had a conversation with Mike Ursillo regarding this in regards to state law and an issue with preemption, and Mike can certainly give the council some background on that if you'd like to hear that now or during the meeting.
Mike, you want to touch on that now?
We've done some preliminary research on this because it was on your docket a little bit earlier, and there is definitely a state law preemption issue that we'd have to deal with. We would be changing the rules with regard to a Class A application, the retail or package store liquor license application, which is not presently allowed. I'd like to do a little bit further research and provide you with a formal memo so that you have everything in front of you with the backup. So I suggest when we get to that item at the meeting, refer to my office, and I'll prepare a memo, and we'll do a deep dive for you on it.
Thank you, Mike.
I would also point out that we may have, Mr. Thayer may be here this evening if the council would like to have him speak, or another representative of the EDC. Moving on to communication item I. This is a resolution by the Burrowville Town Council in opposition to a number of bills that are pending in the General Assembly concerning gun control, and there are 6 House bills and 6 Senate bills that are detailed in the actual resolution from the town of Burrowville, and I would defer to the council on how they'd like to, whether they'd like to place this on file or some other action. Next, we have item J, and this is an email from the 300th Anniversary Steering Committee Chairperson Joanne Esposito requesting council's consideration for providing an update on the progress of the steering committee for the 300th anniversary. Joanne will be here this evening. She does have a very brief slide presentation that will provide some detail on the status of the steering committee's activities and planning, if the council is so inclined to have her come up and speak. She can provide you with the detail on that item. Next, we have communication item O, and this is a letter from the Hopkinton Town Council opposing a House Bill 6676 related to taxation with regard to assessment of renewable energy resources, solar panels. This particular bill was removed at the request of the sponsor. It was postponed. This was back in February. There hasn't been any activity on it since that point. I might suggest the council consider placing on file. Next, we have, there are no appointments this evening, so we'll skip down to new business. If there's no questions on the consent agenda, we have the first item, C, which is a bid award to New England Building and Bridge for repair and replacement of the water tank anchor bolts at Mawtucket and Victoria Lane. You may recall that in August of 2021, there was a bid award for the engineering and design for that project, and John Schock is recommending a bid award to New England Building and Bridge to complete the job. New England Building and Bridge is also the vendor that is doing the Matunic Beach Road seawall project.
Terry, is John in attendance right now?
John is not. He could not make it this evening. He's ill, and so we have a detailed memorandum from him on this.
Could I ask a question about new business item B, 12B, that's on the consent agenda? It's the active assailant training.
I'm sorry, let me get back to that. Yes, for the training for the EMS
So
staff.
I think it's a wonderful and necessary thing. I just didn't know if there was ever opportunities to coordinate and with other communities, because maybe a combined training instead of a one-by-one community to work at a higher level and more collaboratively. I don't know if Craig is here, he could.
Great question. Craig is here. He can certainly address that now if you'd like. Did I see Craig? Oh, here.
Ooh.
Good evening. Good question, yeah. The way this training runs is they charge per student, and we are actually engaging with other agencies among us to help with that cost.
Thank
So yes.
All right, I just,
No, it's good. It's a good question, but yeah, we are. Charlestown's going to be involved, probably Narragansett, and others the same day, which helps reduce that cost per student.
thank you.
Next, item D, we have a recommendation for an award of contract to Connectivity Point. This is a recommendation from our facilities superintendent to contract with Connectivity Point in order to install the key fob security electronic access systems in 4 separate buildings: the Guild, the Senior Center, the Peacedale Office Building, and the Highway Department. These are the same access systems we have in place in the other town facilities, and the recommendation is to stay with the same vendor and the same system for continuity. Next, we have the another recommendation from Public Services, and this is a recommendation to authorize an award of contract to a company called National Water Main Cleaning Company. In John's memo, he goes into detail about an issue with one of the stormwater drains on Matunic Beach Road. It's been compromised, and there needs to be rehab of that particular pipe. Typically, the Highway Division would either handle this or a third party that the town uses regularly, but because of the proximity to a water line, he is recommending going out to bid for this particular specialized company in order to repair that stormwater drain on Matunic Beach Road. He's recommending that the Road Improvement Reserve Fund be used in order to fund this project because it was an unexpected repair. Related to that, item F is another recommendation from John Schock of Public Services with regard to extending the existing contract that we have with T. Maiozzi for reclamation and paving services. Again, he's recommending we stay with Maiozzi. They also have a state bid. It is likely we will not, if we were to go out to bid at this time, we would not get the same pricing that we're getting now in light of inflation. This is likely the last time we will be able to extend this bid, and John's recommending that we do so. He's also noted in his memorandum that because of the additional paving that will be needed on Matunic Beach Road as a result of the repair of the stormwater line, that project be moved up ahead of, he's got North Road and he's got Frank Avenue and Moonstone Beach Road, but he's reprioritizing in order to take care of the Matunic Beach Road due to the public safety issue that could come up. If there are no questions, the last item is a closed executive session related to, there are 2 items on here. One is related to a pending litigation, and the other is related to real estate and the Ministerial Road property.
Any questions for the manager? All right, if no questions, we'll take about a 15-minute recess before the meeting starts at 7:30.
Hi, Mike.
Are you ready?
I recognize you from your picture. Yes. Transition. And I'm renting it. Income affordable housing for elderly. That's life.
You know, there's a lot of facilities. Oh, that's
I mean, the other problem is that you're on townhouses. And when you're my age, you're not doing one floor. Condos.
Village down Indian.
yeah,
That's 55, right?
right. Yep.
I think they're all ranches. I haven't been
I
there.
think so. There's, well, even by, South Village, what's the one by Gravelly Hill Road? Oh, all right. Oh, there's a lot of, one by Gravelly Hill Road that they're building like crazy. My aunt just moved.
Oh, really? Can
Yeah.
you send me the address?
South Shore Village, it's, look up Chickadee Lane.
This is in South Carolina.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll see South Shore, what's that? South Shore. Yeah, there's, I'll find out. I have an email that I listed, all of those. I'll send it to you.
Okay, that sounds good, thank you.
Good evening. Welcome to Town Hall. It is Monday, April 25th, around 7:30 p.m. This is a regularly scheduled Town Council meeting. First on the agenda is the pledge to the flag. Next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement statement, which I will read. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land on which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe whose land and water we benefit from today. Next is the roll call. If you could, Susan.
Council President McEntee,
Here.
Council Vice President Collins,
Here.
Councilwoman Bergner,
Here.
Councilwoman Kelso,
Here.
Councilwoman Rose.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. That's going to bring us to item 4, approval of minutes of previous meetings.
Motion to approve items 4A and B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes. It's going to bring us to item 5, consent agenda.
Motion to approve item 5, the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries. It's going to bring us to licenses. Item 6A is a resolution granting a special events license to conduct a portion of the Ragnar Relay, New England and South Kingstown on Friday, May 20, 2022, starting at 12:30. Invitation approval.
It's actually Amber. Julia is still in Utah.
Well, welcome, Amber. If you wanted to tell us all about this event, feel free.
Yeah, we came through in October, and it's a 200-mile running relay starting in Groton, Connecticut, ending in Quincy. It goes overnight. We'll hit you guys, as you mentioned, around noon on Friday, May 20th. We have several charity teams on course. We're able to benefit churches and schools and multiple organizations along the route, as well as fundraising teams, Smile Mass, Dylan's Wings of Change, a lot of local teams, as well as traveling teams. I anticipate runners out of the area by about 7 p.m. The original application indicated 300 teams. We are at 160 teams, which is good news for you guys. Last year we were at 130, and I don't know how many of you saw us trickle through. Often people don't even notice we're in the town. Narragansett called in the middle, in the thick of it, and wondered where we were. So I don't see much change as far as traffic coming through, and then we'll see kind of how the course holds that, and if we can add more runners next year, we'll do that. If not, then we'll just stick where we are.
All right, thank you, Amber. Any questions for Amber?
Motion to approve item 6A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's going to bring us to item 6B, which is a resolution granting a victualling license to Willie's Place of High Street, Wakefield, subject to approval by the building official, police department, fire chief, and Rhode Island Department of Health. Application by William Johnson. If you're here, just feel free to come up to the microphone.
So yeah, I'm planning on taking over the old Benny's Clam Shack or Quick Rick's. I'm gonna go back to more of a Quick Rick style, breakfast, lunch, probably closing around 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Sunday through Saturday, so every day. And yeah, I'm going to actually kind of bring a Native American style to it with fry bread tacos, and then different variations of that, and as well as wieners, the more popular things, burgers, fries, and that kind of thing.
Excellent. I look forward to trying. Any questions for William?
I just have a question. With this license, could they stay open in the evenings for some of the events that happen in downtown? Like I'm thinking Ladies' Night, Oktoberfest, any of the EDC events? Yes? Because he said just till 5, so just...
Good question. Thank you. Because, like on Thursday, even like the water fires in
Exactly.
the summertime. Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
So you have the flexibility to do that, and you might do that.
Yes.
Great.
So when do you plan to open up?
June 1st.
Excellent.
Motion to approve item 6B.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes. Good luck, and we look forward to trying.
Thank you.
All right, that's going to bring us to item 7, public hearing. 7A is a public hearing relative to proposed amendments to the Town Code, Chapter 17, Taxation, Article 3, property tax exemptions for elderly persons as follows. Section 1744, amount of exemption, filing of applications. At this point, we have a presentation that Lucas Maury will be providing.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, excellent. I am Luke Murray. I'm the Director of Administrative Services. The council did receive a memo on this from me, but I thought it would be beneficial tonight for both yourselves and the public to kind of walk through the rationale of what I recommended, and then obviously ask any questions that you wish of me. So, first slide. So tonight, just to frame the discussion, as you know, exemptions are not required. It's not an operational imperative. Every community is a little different. It's really a policy decision. It's something that starts with everyone pays their fair share of taxes, and then there are policy decisions made on who kind of gets exempted out. And that's a little bit of the discussion we'll be having tonight. Different communities offer different exemptions due to policy choices, economic considerations, so sometimes it's to spur downtown development and other things, political considerations. Quite frankly, sometimes these things just go with the whim of the public. We just have to be careful that too many exemptions, and we're lucky we don't actually have many, our former town manager didn't believe in having too many, can sway. Ultimately, the tax bill remains the same. Somebody has to pay it. So as we shift exemptions or provide exemptions, that tax bill has to get shifted on somebody. The ultimate number does not change. Next slide. So just a very brief of the background of the current elderly exemption. It was enacted in 1971 under Article 3, 1741 through 1744, for anyone who wants to get a detailed look at that from the public. It does provide property tax relief to ages 65 and older, and it is income verified for certain income qualifications. Applicants must be a resident or owner-occupant of a property within the town for a period of 5 years by December 31st. Applies to non-income producing properties, so obviously anything that would be income producing, including any home-based professions, are not eligible. And the income and maximum credit have been adjusted in the past, and I will caveat on occasion, as you know, because there has been some gaps in looking back at the numbers, and we'll talk about that a little bit tonight. Next slide, please. So this kind of summarizes the adjustments that have been done over the years. From 2007 to 2020, there were no adjustments done. As you know, you had received a presentation in 2020 by former town assessor Jean Bouchard, who recommended a 5% increase in the maximum tax credits at that time, and that was passed. And then the council discussed increasing the income brackets and the tax credit on an alternating basis year over year moving forward. And in 2021, you did increase the income brackets by 5%. And in reviewing your discussion from last year, obviously you merged the lowest two brackets. And there was a discussion about equality and equity, and it was more equitable to merge those two brackets for the benefit of the population. It was feeling that we'd kind of outdated that lower income bracket, which was quite low. So moving on to some of the facts of the current program. The average home value, I did some analysis of the current last year's program. The average home value for participants was around $256,000, just to give you a range. Obviously that is likely increased with the current market, but just to give you a sense of where those values are. There was one outlier of about $500,000, but beyond that, most of them fell in the $200,000 to $300,000 assessment range. The new value, just for a point of reference, would need to exceed, we've talked about that 31% approximate number, to exceed $335,475 to experience a tax rate increase this year. So if they were at the average assessment last year of $256,000, if they're seeing their assessment go up past $335,000, they'll see an increase. If they see it below $335,000, it's likely they'll actually pay less in overall taxes this year. And you can see at the bottom I have, 20% of the participants are currently in the lower two income brackets. This I'll talk about in a second when we talk about the merger under my recommendation. And then some comparisons between 2020 and 21. Obviously the program was adjusted to increase it 5%, and you can see the difference there on what they had. That had was about $30,000 that kind of came out of the taxation base. Just as a point of reference in discussion tonight. And so this kind of reiterates that. You can see the delta there. There was 11 additional participants, and the net was $33,000 in increase year over year, increase in tax credits. Now, That may have occurred anyway, just because population shifts and whatnot, but it's likely, due to some of the changes that you had made, increasing eligibility. Next slide, please. So just so you understand a little bit of the rationale I looked at when I tried to kind of put this through the hopper and just create a firm basis, I went back to the basis that the former town assessor kind of relied on to make his past recommendations, which was the Social Security Cost of Living Allowance, or COLA. That has increased over the years since that 2007 mark, and that was discussed in previous conversations with council, and the rationale behind increasing year over year that 5% to do a slow catch-up on inflation. Unfortunately, we are seeing higher than average inflation. We all know that. And so this year, the COLA went up by 5.9% to reflect current market. That effectively automatically puts us behind because we're at a 5% increase year over year. We wouldn't catch up this year if we just kept that increase. Next slide, please. So the other thing I did look at was the Health and Human Services updates on poverty guidelines. They update these annually. And you can see that the overall average increase was about 5%, 4.78. I just was interested to see how this compared with the COLA, and it generally falls in line. And again, falls in line with what we all know. Prices have increased. Therefore, COLAs have increased and guidelines have increased along with it. Next slide, please. So what's this data tell us? The town's obviously falling behind from that 2020 adjustment that the council had done. The council did state that they had a goal of increasing year over year by that 5% to compensate for that inflation. A 5% increase would not allow the town to overcome that SS COLA of 5.9%. And 26 of the program's 129 participants, and I mentioned this earlier, 20% are in the lowest two income brackets, because I really tried to drill down. Again, there were comments by council members last year that they would be in favor of merging the lowest two brackets. I kind of put it through the litmus test of, does this make sense based on current market conditions, et cetera, and ultimately came out with a recommendation, which is on the next slide, I believe, which is to increase the gross household income threshold by 10.9%. So the recommendation is at 10.9 because if you take that 5.9% for this year and you increase it that 5% that you wanted to net year over year, you're effectively keeping pace. So that 10.9 keeps us there. In addition to that, I recommended merging the lowest two income brackets. I believe that bringing it up to the 0 to 20,000 plus or minus mark is reasonable and gets the eligibility up within that category and makes it more equitable. And again, increasing the maximum tax credit by 5%. So this increase boosts the overall credit up, and that is somewhat of a look at the reflection of the market. Market rates are high, giving a little bit more credit to those who need it the most in those income brackets. Next slide, please. So you'll see the numbers here. They're a little tough to see on the slide, but if members of the public have the agenda, these numbers are in there under the resolution, what the older numbers were and the newer numbers. And you can see it does push the numbers up, the eligibility to 43,251, if my glasses are working correctly here. And that's a fairly substantial increase over last year, probably not as much as some would like, probably less than others. But again, that's a policy discussion that can be had, but that's based on that 10.9% and then the 5% increase in the maximum credit. Next slide, please. So just some important considerations. I did just a quick fiscal analysis based on last year's spreadsheet that we keep it tabulated of the exemptions that we provided. And we're looking conservatively of $30,000 to $50,000 impact on the overall budget. So that's, if you were to pass this, we can expect it's likely going to be in the range that I showed earlier from that 2020 to 2021, which was a $33,000 impact. We've increased it quite a bit this year if that moves forward. So just keep that in mind as we're going to be discussing budget. And why didn't we do more? You could certainly do more. Obviously, the higher the threshold you go up and more exemption we provide, it could shock a little bit of the system, as I call it. You obviously you have a budget to consider in that overall number, so you have to make up that money somewhere. So that allows for an incremental increase, and again, you had said 5% over year to avoid shocking the system. And then just keep in mind, as I said earlier, it does shift the burden onto our other community members. Again, that's a policy discussion. but that money has to be paid for. So when you take it off somebody else's tax bill, it effectively has to creep onto something else, or you have to effectively reduce the overall budget, but you have to cut, and that cuts potential services. So, we do build in some, what I call float factor, into the budget for shifts throughout the year, but obviously this isn't the only potential shift we have, and we don't know the number of participants coming into the program. So, next slide. I think that was my last. Yes. So I'll entertain any questions that you have.
Can you explain the process that someone would have to go through to apply for this program?
Sure. So there's our website outlines it, but they could also get an application. Our staff is very good at getting people through this process. Also, the Senior Center has services available. But it's an application process. You do have to have verification of residency, verification of income, and there's a number of documents that will qualify. They can our staff can walk them through that. So my recommendation would be to the public, certainly call, stop in. If you're website savvy, certainly go there and start there. There's an application. So there's a number of resources available.
Thank you, Luke. Any other questions for Luke?
Luke, just on timing for the application process, is it rolling? Is it open? Is there a finite period to apply?
Yeah, so the council did extend it to, correct me if I'm wrong, May 15th. So that was something we did approximately a month ago, I believe, at this point. So we did extend that, knowing that this would come up, and if we feel that it's something we need to extend again, although I would say the staff likes to lock down the tax roll, and we need enough time to do that and get those applications in. So right now it's May 15th, so I would urge anybody watching or who's interested in the program, if they're going to qualify after tonight, apply as soon as possible.
Thank you, Luke. Any other questions for Luke? All right, thank you. At this time, we're going to open it up for a public hearing. There's a lot of people in attendance here tonight, so we're going to limit it to one time. So if you could think concisely about what you want to say carefully, and then we'll give you 5 minutes to say what you have to say. So first come, first serve. We just ask that you first identify yourself. Thank you.
Well, he made a good... Well, my name is Martha Stamp. And just so you all know, I'm living proof. He's pretty young, but I'm 85. And I tell you what, I don't think I'll say much of the speech that I had here. Do I get 5 minutes? Wow. First time in history, 40 years. Thank you, Rory. I think I'll just focus on that application right first, because he didn't tell you too much about that. I happen to have the application right here. And what scares me a little bit, because I've been here so long in Rhode Island my whole life, total gross household income. Now, you forgot something. What you forgot was that we have deductions from the from the federal government. We have deductions because Medicare Plan A constantly goes up all the time. And then you take the Plan B in Medicare. He might not know too much, that young guy that was just there. I didn't get his name. So you see all the deductions, plus just the supplemental A, B, and whatever because you never know if you're going to be sick and have to go to a Boston hospital because you can't get the best doctor in Rhode Island. Everybody that has a state job, they get health care for life. Rory, you can ding it at number 4, then I know that I'm going to end. The next thing is when you own property that you've paid taxes on all your life, and you fear that a senator like Senator Bell will put it. This I never would have thought of. until he wants to tax everybody that doesn't have the shot, or he wants to make a person that doesn't have the shots $50 every month and double their income tax. Well, pretty soon I'm not going to have to worry about doubling my tax, because next year I'm going to get in. But because we can't deduct the standard or even half of the standard, because I'm so old now, it's gone up for me, and I have it on my income tax. It's the most wonderful thing to see you get some relief from the federal government after paying through your nose. And like I said the last time, and I didn't want to bring anything up, like I said the last time, everybody in this room is probably younger than I. But always remember, you are going to get old. I also want to thank the people that have helped me get all of this. I want to thank the tax office. David, I don't know whether he likes me or not, but he smiled tonight. And Terry Murray has been absolutely wonderful to me. And so has Missy and Nicole. They have been absolutely wonderful. And you know, I don't give fake news out. Those individuals were excellent to me. And it makes me feel good, because 40 years down here, and I could never say that, but this time I can. I think if I don't write it down, sometimes I forget. I thank you very much. I didn't take up any extra time and have Rory say, "You're finished."
Thank you, Martha. Anyone else like to speak on the public hearing at issue here? Just feel free to come up to the microphone.
Hi, my name's Greg Sweet. I was looking through the tax exempt for the elderly, and the low end, the range of, well, 0 to even 30,000, I think that's very low. I think that should be 0 to probably 35-ish, because who can live on even 30,000 in this town? The other thing, I don't know what goes into it, but these tax credits, if someone in Matunic bought their house 60 years ago, which I don't think is an uncommon scenario, you know, the house value went up quite a bit this past time. So if they're even in the, say, 40 to 43,000, they're only getting $500 back. I think a percentage is probably more reasonable than a flat dollar amount. I also think you should consider health expenses, like Arthur said. There's probably some other expenses that should be part of a formula to figure something out. I think the elderly are really they're going to have a tough time the next few years, especially in the Matunic area. So.
Thank you, Greg. Anyone else in the audience? Just feel free to come up to the microphone.
Mike Barron. It's a little out of my lane. But while the presentation was going on, I checked a couple of federal references with respect to what the other speakers were addressing, the council might want to look into changing the definition where it says total gross household income under subsection A. The federal poverty level is actually based on modified adjusted gross income, according to the regulations I just looked up. That would be an opportunity for the council to award or take into account more of the situations that were addressed by the first speaker in terms of significant disability issues. Those go into adjusting gross income without having to have the town make an individual assessment every single time somebody puts in an application. Just a suggestion.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else in the audience? I figure a lot of you showed up for this one. If anyone wants to speak, feel free to just come right up. Anyone who would like to come up, first come, first serve. First person to get to the microphone, they have priority. Come on up.
Do I have to speak on this topic?
Yep.
I don't know if this relates to the topic, but I took a couple of notes here, and the comment
Bob, you got to
about-
just state your name first, sorry.
Oh, Bob Traeger, Succotash Road, I guess, barring a few years in Providence, a South County, longtime resident, but you have to be here for hundreds of years to be accepted. I understand it. And that, I don't know, I was going to speak at open, when you give the public open comments, but this is an interesting topic because I've been listening to a lot of stuff lately on what's going on with housing, and the latest one was there's one of the groups that a bunch of people get together and decide they're going to buy up everything. Well, now they're buying up all the trailer parks. But in this country, I guess about a third of the sales now of homes have been taken by, I'm having a mental block on the word. It's a simple thing. This is what happens to me. That's why it's hard for me to get in front of the group. But venture capitalists, I guess they call them. The people that have a lot of money and they're not happy with having what they've got, they go on a lot more. That's what I call a venture capitalist. I'm sure there are many venture capitalists could be defined in a different way, and there are probably some out there that are actually really trying to help the overall situation in the country. Everybody, anyway, I don't know how people survive today, to be honest with you, but I've talked to several people in the community just by happen to know, talk with them. They were over doing something for me, whatever. And almost everyone discussed their families, and they were long-time, multi-generational residents of this community. But their children can't afford to live here. You must have heard this 100 times, you guys. You're up there. You're getting. You get this kind of dialogue all the time. I realize this is nothing new. That's the problem. It's nothing new, and it's getting worse. That's the problem. It isn't anything new. I can remember. I mean, I used to come to a lot of meetings, and I mean, these things have been brought up over and over and over and over again, and I don't think there's an easy answer to them because of the nature of the United States' way of, this is the American way. If you can go out and make as much as you can, and get as much as you can, and if you happen to be the lucky ones that figure out how to do that, you're all right. But I think this is something that needs even more work, taking care of the people. There are, even in South County, although it's being bought out pretty quick, it's being taken over. And that is not meant to be a negative comment either. The people that are taking it over are great people. But they're improving everything. But it is closing out a whole segment of the population. And I mean, I just hope you have that on your mind whenever you make a decision. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Bob.
Make sure this isn't like a Rosanna moment. I was reading this post I got, and it was saying that we're thinking about raising the budget by 1.8%, adding $350,000 to the total budget, bringing the school budget to $68 million. Basically,
before you keep going, that's the public hearing. That's the next item. So if you just
see,
want to hold
that's
that.
the moment I was talking about.
Thank you. So if anyone else in the audience would like to speak relative to the issues involving public hearing item 7A, feel free to just come on up.
Good evening. My name is Doral Beasley. So I mentioned this before in this chamber, that this year recipients of Social Security benefits received the highest increase, cost of living increase in more than 20 years, 5.9%. Across the country, the average, for the average recipient of Social Security, the whole United States, that worked out to $92 a month. But as this lady over here in the corner said, that the price of things are going up, including the cost of Medicare Part B, which went up $22. So you take 22 off of 92, and now you're down to 70%, $70. We're also, everybody in this room, I'm sure, knows about this. The inflation that is affecting the entire globe is also affecting everybody's pocketbook here in Rhode Island as well. Inflation in February was 7% higher than last year. Last month it was 8.5% higher than a year ago, and in April they're projecting that it's going to be close to 9% higher than it was a year ago. So just need to understand that when two-thirds of the population, two-thirds of the property owners of this town have now seen their taxes, their valuations of their properties are going up, that when you set your tax rate, two-thirds of the people in this town are going to have to pay higher taxes. So remember, our largest segment, our fastest growing segment of people in South Kingstown are the people 60 years of age and older.
Thank you, Doral. Anyone else in the audience like to speak on item 7A? Just feel free to come on up. Seeing none, any thoughts from the council members?
A question for Luke. What is the total cost that we abate in taxes for the seniors? I know you said it's going to go up potentially 30 to 50,000, but what did we use, what did we spend last year?
I think, actually,
And I don't think I saw that.
so in 2021, the total tax credits were $213,000, or approximately $214,000. So we would be upwards of 250 to 260, maybe more this year, depending on where it fell. So that's how much we're actually taking off the tax roll. And if it may, we have talked internally about looking at the program in total. I think there was great feedback. Feedback is a gift. So I take notes on all this, and I think there was some good feedback from the public. And looking at the program for next year and qualifiers, because obviously home value also does play a part. And so that's something I think that needs to be looked at. We have talked internally. As you know, we're looking for a town assessor, but when we fill that position, I think that's something we're going to take a deep dive on this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. Any other questions from the members? All right, seeing no one else from the public interested in talking, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes.
Make a motion to approve item 7A as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'll just say, I think Luke said it well. This is a good start, or not a start, a continuing expression of our will to make this more equitable and make it easier for elderly residents here in town to continue to live here. I do think that there are ways to, continue to improve the program, but this is a good step, so happy to support it.
Thank you, Abel.
No, I think I appreciated the seniors who advocated for the program for change. I think it started at the beginning of the budget process as well. I think it's really important that we take care of that. This is a very vulnerable population earning, $20,000 or $40,000 is very difficult to meet all the other bills that you have. So I do fully support the changes, and I think we do need to look at some of the suggestions that people brought forward, and I look forward to doing that in the next 6 months.
I'll just say thank you, Luke Meyer, for the presentation. Good work on this. And to our elderly residents, we're mindful of the inflation that's happening currently, and it's only right that we increase this at a time like this. And as costs continue to rise, if they do, we'll revisit this and look at any potential revisions that need to be done to accommodate you. So we think this is a good thing. But thank you again, Luke.
One comment is we did put in place the 5% escalation every year modification, and I think maybe we should look at the 5% plus the inflation rate every year, not just keep it at that 5, but add the inflation rate to the 5 to try to bring this program a little more equity to the low-income seniors.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes. That's going to bring us to item 7B, which is a public hearing relative to adoption of the Town Council's final fiscal year 22-23 budget, as shown on Exhibit 1 attached here 2. This time we have a brief presentation by Terry Murphy.
Good evening. This is the final budget adoption public hearing, and just to remind the council and the public of the preliminary adopted budget from March 21st. You will see that the net property tax levy for FY 22-23 as approved on March 21st by the council is $75,396,416. That equates to a tax rate of $10.97 per thousand, and that also reflects a 1.79% increase over the current 21-22 budget. As the council recalls, the school department funding will be level funded at maintenance of effort. We also should, and that is, excuse me, What the council reduced the overall budget by on March 21st were these reductions in a total amount of $344,171. The original proposed budget reflected a 2.2% increase with a tax rate of $11.02. So on March 21st, the council reduced that by 5 cents down to $10.97 and 1.79 increase rather than a 2.25% increase. The council had also directed me and staff to look at other alternatives for potential further reductions to the budget, and in doing so, we've present these options. Option 3, the shaded option on the slide, reflects the current preliminary budget. You'll notice option 3A and the grayed out rows show line item reductions that would reflect a minimal impact, and the departments were tasked with going back and looking at their commodity lines and other line items where they could potentially make reductions that would reflect a minimal impact on the departmental operations, and that amount total $56,600. Option 3A would then further reduce the budget by another penny in the tax rate, so it would reduce it by $10.96 a thousand, or by it would be a total increase over the current year of 1.72%. Option 4 was the original option presented at the March 21st meeting. You'll see that the increase in the unassigned fund balance transfer was the addition in that line, which would reduce the overall tax rate to $10.95 a thousand. And the discussion revolved around whether or not it was prudent to increase the unassigned fund balance transfer based on the fund balance policy that the council has. Option 4A reflects the cuts that were explored at the departmental level, both the minimal impact and then line item reductions that would have impact to services in the amount of $63,608. That totals the $120,208 from option 4, which would have been the increase in the unassigned fund balance transfer. I would note that the impact to services reflects things like education and training, materials and supplies necessary for the day-to-day operations in departmental operations. Option 4B reflects the minimal impact cuts, $56,600, plus possibly increasing the unassigned fund balance transfer by the $63,608, which would again give you that $10.95 tax rate. So you'll note that options 4, 4A, and 4B all reflect a tax rate of $10.95, or an increase in over the current year budgets by 1.63%. They're just variations of how you want to get there, basically. And then option 5 would be complete level funding with a zero increase. That would have significant impact on which would be unidentified reductions in personnel and/or services, town services. So that is where we are at this evening. The Exhibit 1 in the agenda shows all of the funds in detail that were included in the warrant that was advertised. The separate funds with regard to enterprise funds and recreation funds that are separate, but this particular scenario, these scenarios here are for the municipal general fund budget and impact the tax rate.
Thank you, Terry. Any questions for Terry from the members up here at this time?
I have a question. You sent us an email last week about the anticipated surplus. It's about $92,000. That's a conservative estimate, you had said?
Correct. Okay. So, and that is primarily because the budget is submitted before even the end of the third quarter of the operating year, so it's difficult to project what the year-end surplus may or may not be with only having really a half a year to base that on.
So that's based in February, not on April 21st when you wrote the email?
That's correct. So the projection is based on what you see in the budget document. We can't accurately project. Even now, there's still not enough data. I believe I mentioned in my communication that typically around the middle of May, there's a projection, a year-end projection done when there's 8 to 10 weeks left in the fiscal year that would more accurately predict what's expected in terms of year-end surplus.
So the amount that you wrote in the memo in April is the amount that you thought it was in January, not updated to 8 weeks left in the fiscal year?
That's correct. We don't have that projection yet.
Because that's what I had asked 2 weeks ago, what they expected for a surplus, and that's why I thought it was more closely tied to what we would expect on June 30th.
Sorry, I got a few questions for you on the same point here. So you say the just below 92,000 is the anticipated surplus that we expect to experience this year. You say it's a conservative amount. So when you say that, that means it's at the low end. Likely the actual number will be higher than what's
Correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
Now, if in fact we decided we wanted to use some of this surplus, let's say 60,000 of the $92,000 surplus, would that be the same as pulling 60,000 from the unassigned fund balance? Because in effect, that surplus would be going to the unassigned fund balance. So would that be the same thing?
Yes, that would be essentially the same thing if the council were to decide not to have any year-end transfers, if there were no recommendations to move any money into the next fiscal year for capital projects, which is common practice to do that. So it would be essentially moving unassigned fund.
So if at year end we did yield a $92,000 surplus, that surplus would not necessarily go to the unassigned fund balance. It may temporarily, but it would then be moved to capital reserve and things like that to be used toward capital expenditures. Is that correct?
Well, that would be a council decision. That would be a recommendation by the town manager's office in conjunction with the finance department, looking at what projects may be on the priority list that might not have full funding. And if you looked back at some of the previous year-end transfers, you'll see that most of those are capital projects or capital equipment that are able to be escalated and completed more quickly because the funding is added beyond what's budgeted for the capital program.
Now, we've talked, in previous meetings, we've talked about the potential downside from the view of rating agencies and things of the like in regard to the continual increased use of the unassigned fund balance to use in our operating budget. Now, if we decided to use any amounts from this surplus into this operating budget that we're voting on here, would that, in a sense, be considered a transfer from the unassigned fund balance because of its temporary nature of going there before it comes out? So, in effect, it would be, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so anything that's left over at the year end goes to the unassigned fund balance. So yes, that would be a transfer for them from the unassigned fund balance.
Understood. Thank you. Any other further questions from the members?
I do. What kind of implication as far as the bond rating goes? What exactly are we talking about? Like, how likely is this one-time transfer if we choose to do that? How likely is that to affect that? I'm having trouble understanding that.
What I can tell you is that what the bond rating agencies don't like to see is spikes in shortfall, and then the next year there's none, and then it goes back up again, that there's no consistency, that it's not a smooth, consistent operation, that raises red flags and questions in terms of how the town is managing their funds. It also speaks to the potential for a structural deficit in terms of continuing to pull from the unassigned fund balance.
You said continuing to pull. So have we done this in the past?
So there has been unassigned fund balance, and then at year end, my understanding is that there is there's either the fund transfer to capital, or there's reimbursement of the fund balance with the year-end surplus, whatever's left. Now, I don't know what that's going to look like. We don't anticipate $1 million surplus based on what I've been advised at this point, but we won't know until we're closer to year end. We're working on those projections. This year has been difficult because the number of changes in the operation and the organization with personnel, with retirements, with payouts. I don't have that information at this time. The projection has not been completed.
Could we just go to some basic numbers? How much are we using of the unassigned fund balance in this budget?
For the current budget?
Yep, this one. Not including the 63, but what are we already taking? Because that speaks to what Jess is asking.
Fiscal year, the current fiscal year, or
This
22,
one.
23? Mm-hmm.
Is it in the budget documents that we got? I'm just trying to figure out.
Is it 1.2 million? Is that right? Okay. $1.2 million.
1.2. And then if we were looking at option 4B, that's where it is, right? It's an additional 63.
Correct.
And 608.
Correct.
Okay. And last year, we used about the same, correct?
1.32 million, $1,320,208. So we're trying to reduce that reliance on fund balance, because we know in future years it may be needed more in terms of what's coming down the pike with bond obligations, school facility projects, debt.
So I guess if we were to use an additional 63,608, it's not going to necessarily create a spike or a drop from past years. It's going to kind of, so that's not going to set off any red flags.
I would say not. I mean,
Thank you.
Sorry, do you know what the surplus realized at the end of last fiscal year was?
so the year-end fund balance at the end of 2021 was $896,432.
The $196,000 surplus was realized in that fiscal year?
Correct. So there were operating transfers of $850,000.
Got it, thank you.
We took 1.3 last year. We put back
All right.
Well, I don't think it went back because there were balance. Yeah, it was transferred to capital expenses and such. I just want to we haven't brought it up, but part of the problem of continual sort of habitual use of fund balance to patch over deficits is that the further you do that, the more catch-up you have to play eventually down the road if we want to have a balanced budget and not use fund balance. Each year that we increase our use of the unassigned funds leads to a structural deficit in out years that have to be made up at some point, and that's going to require raising taxes at that point. You have to pay the piper at some point. I just think we need to keep it realistic here.
Except my question would be, at previous budget hearings, we've heard that we're giving too much money to the schools. So in my head, I'm thinking we're going to be able to balance that out because what's getting transferred to the schools will not be needed. I mean, they don't, with a declining enrollment, you know, we're hearing, and those numbers were sort of verified by the people in the room, that there's $3 million, we're overpaying by at least $3 million. So when I hear that and I think, well, you know, we have to sort of shift the line, you know, it's going to have to go from 75-25 school municipal, something more in line with Narragansett, which is paying 50% municipal and, you know, to the schools and 50% to the municipal side. So I hear what you're saying and I understand that. It's just in my head, I think about it's $67 million or whatever, or 79, whatever that number is total. I can't recall it because I'm blurring it with the schools. That's the whole pot. And how we divide it out in future years could be different than how we're doing it now.
Perhaps at some point we will be realizing operational savings through, you know, consolidating schools, but that is not the case in this, I don't think, in this budget year.
I agree.
All right. Any further discussion up here before we open it up?
I just want to speak to that, tapping the unassigned fund balance again. Prudent fiscal management for municipalities is imperative, especially given what we're facing with school improvement bonds coming down the road. Maintaining our bond rating, I believe, is of utmost importance. We know that interest rates are already climbing. Gone is the 2%. That's gone. We're going to be at 5%. I'm sure somewhere in that range as we go out to bond some school improvement programs. Tapping the unassigned fund balance will send a message to the rating agencies that we are not in a stable financial place, I guess, platform. We have a policy here of keeping our unassigned fund balance between 12% and 16%. We've tapped into that at $1.2 million for this budget coming up, fiscal year 23. That puts us in the 15% range, which is well within our parameters, our set goals for fiscal management, for municipal fiscal management. Tapping it any further will jeopardize our bond rating, with Moody's and the people that are going to drive the interest rates we're going to have to pay. So I am comfortable with our preliminary budget adoption from a month ago. I don't see any need to further tap, and I don't think it wise. I think, in fact, it's penny wise and pound foolish to do so. So we need to stay the course, keep our margins where they are in that 15% range, and I would be just advising that we all need to be cautious here.
I just want to say it's sort of ironic that we have two public hearings. One is the elderly tax abatement, and then there's this, where many people don't have the ability to adjust their budget. You don't they don't have a slush fund to just absorb the increase. They are paying more in fuel. I've said this every time. Fuel, their water bill is going to go up, your sewer bill is going to go up, your food costs are going up. You can't make magic money. So I don't want to see the year-end surplus be $350,000, and we spent 20 minutes deciding whether we were going to make it 90 or 63. Because to me, I would be embarrassed to my community that I kept that money from seniors, young families, people dealing with illnesses. That's where they're coming here and saying it, and they've come, not the typical people come and ask us to pay attention to what's happening. And so I don't have any problem with other people, but I am saying that I listen to what the people are asking me, and that's what gives me the most impact. And I don't want to have a budget where, oh, we just transferred an extra $300,000 or $400,000 and we took it from our neighbors who might be sending a kid to college or buying a pair of eyeglasses or fixing their roof. So I want to be sure that we're doing right by them, and I also know that our bond rating isn't going to flip on the dime of $100,000. So I want to be very sensitive, and I want this budget to be reflective of what the many, many articles in newspapers talk about how expensive it is going forward. 2 years ago, the preliminary budget was adopted, and people didn't make many changes at all. Even in this budget, there's a bunch of placeholder things. There's not really big reductions in expenses from the original budget. So for my community, I feel more comfortable taking more from the fund balance and looking at some of the line item reductions with minimal impact. That's where I am, because I'm listening to what the residents are asking.
I just did some quick math here. If your house is valued at $450,000, which seems to be our median, or approaching that as our median, your tax bill at $10.96 is $4,932. If we keep it where it is at $10.97, it's $4 more. $4. $4,936. I, again, will say I think it's penny wise and pound foolish to send red flags to bond rating agencies that we're tapping the unassigned fund balance. I understand that people's budgets are not increasing, on a personal level, but we're talking about $4 on $450,000 valuation. $4. Just so you know.
So I did ask if that would send a red flag, and you, Terry, nodded your head in agreement that would not send a red flag. Is that? I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, yes, I think in general, though, the point of yearly using fund balance in the budget is something that the town needs to be wary of.
And I agree with that 100%. I just think that this year, the past 2 years, have been so difficult on people, and we are, as Councilwoman Bergner said, hearing from people over and over and over again, begging us to help this situation, and we have an opportunity to do that with very little implication. I just don't see why we would not listen to people. I know it's only $4 to some people. I don't know. I like option 4B. I wish others could get on board with that.
I've got a few thoughts I'd like to convey here. Now, when we adopted the preliminary budget in March, we also gave direction to the town manager to look for ways within the departmental budgets to figure out reductions, and she was able to do that. She found approximately $60,000 of which would have minimal impact to no impact on services. So I think as a baseline, 3A is a good starting point here. I think that she's made, at least found the areas where we could have cuts that wouldn't impact services. So I think right off the bat, that should be our starting point. Then after that, it's a matter of whether we want to pull additional funding from, by reducing services, which I would caution against. I do not support that. Or pulling additional funds from the unassigned fund balance to accomplish a tax rate of 1095. I have a question for you, Terry Murphy. If we decided to use $60,000 of the 92 approximately of anticipated surplus that will be realized at the end of this year, could we stipulate in the budget that we passed tonight that $63,000 of the surplus is to be reimbursed to the general fund balance? Or is that something that would sort of tie your hands as inability to use the monies as flexible as you need?
I'm going to be honest. I don't see that if there is a surplus, a year-end surplus, the council has the ability to decide what to do with that. It doesn't necessarily tie my hands or the hands of the administration. We don't know what the year-end surplus is going to be. It's all relative, I guess. You could do it by authorizing it through the fund balance here, or you're doing it at year end. Either way, it's part of the fund. It would be part of the fund balance. So I think it's just a matter of what mechanism you want to use to get there. Does that answer your question?
Let me ask this question, Terry. In past years, and I believe we have we used anticipated surpluses for the current year to use amounts from there and apply it toward the budget voted on for the following year?
Operating? Not operating. Only capital. Year-end surplus goes to, if there's recommendations, to capital programs and one-time expenditures. Not that, again, what that does is you're just supplanting and using fund balance. It becomes kind of a structural deficit scenario, as I understand it. So I would go back to whether you do it at the year end and there's surplus there, or you identify it in the fund balance in the budget.
How about this?
It's one and the same.
Is it possible to condition a transfer from the general fund, sort of contingent upon the amount being there in surplus to satisfy that transfer? Is that something we could do?
From an accounting standpoint?
I've never heard of doing that. I think you're trying to, you need to decide on the future budget, not based on the current budget. I mean, the current budget will drop to fund balance, whatever's left over, but I don't think you want to make it part of the resolution to try and use current year money in the next year. It's the same pot of money, but I think it confuses the two budgets.
Thank you. All right, any other discussion from the members up here? All right, at this point, we'll open it up to the public. We have a lot of people in the audience tonight, so we're going to limit it to one-time speaking. We're going to cap you at 5 minutes, so we'll ask you to consider what you want to say, be concise, and we just ask that you identify yourself when you come up. So with that said, first come, first serve.
Hello, excuse me. My name is Timothy Murphy. I'm the president of the Board of Trustees of the South Kingstown Public Libraries, and I'm here just to speak in support of the library and support of the appropriation in the budget for the library. I know this is a tough fiscal year, but I think that if you look at our library system, we get a lot of bang for our buck. We have a very good system with 3 libraries, and I have a lot of the credit for that goes to our library director, Laurel Clark, who works really hard to be efficient and run an operation with tons of programs for people, very popular. So I just am hoping that we can maintain that support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. All right, anyone else? Just feel free to come right up.
My name is Andrew Shea, and I ran for town council a while ago, and a lot of the same issues that were happening then are still happening now with regard to affordable housing, school budgets increasing. I'm wondering how we can do more with what we already have. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm a business guy, right? When things get difficult, I have to diversify. I have to find another way to make money with what I have in order to keep going. One day it might be roofs, the next day it's decks, and then it's painting somebody's house, or whatever I have to do. My kids and I have had a business in this town for 35 years, and I have had to roll with the punches. So I'm wondering why we don't do more with what we have here. The South Road School is a beautiful facility that I think is underutilized. Suppose we were to take those schools, the classrooms, and rent them to, tradesmen or people who wanted to use individual. You could be a place where kids or people could go and learn. I mean, if I had a classroom there and I could rent it, I would pay a reasonable amount of money. I'm sure a lot of other people would too. And I would teach karate, and I would teach roofing, and I would teach whatever. And plus, I would have an office there, or whatever. I could utilize it for whatever. I'm just saying, this is a crazy idea, just throwing it out there, just thought about it. What I want to do is use the resources that we have in this town to make money so that we don't have to put that burden on taxpayers. I mean, I own my house. I don't have a budget. I don't have a mortgage anymore. I've been doing this for a while. I'm in pretty good shape, but my kids, my daughter runs the business from Leesburg, Florida, because she can't afford to live here. My son Daniel, 27 years old, I love him, but he still lives with me. And my son Andrew lives in Woonsocket and commutes every day. We work in this town. I do the roofs in Narragansett, South Kingstown, Charleston. I mean, Anyway, so what I'm trying to say is the people that work on the homes in this town cannot afford to live here because you keep charging us more money. It's not for me. I'm good now. I'm almost 60 years old, and I own my house, and I don't have to worry about money so much, but every one of the people that work for me can't live here. My kids cannot even live here because it just costs too much money. So what I'm hoping we do is utilize the assets and the resources the town has in order to increase our revenues and decrease the burden on the taxpayer.
Thank you.
I'm going to applaud verbally. I like that
Make sure to state your name.
presentation. Pardon me?
Make sure to state your name. State your name, so we all...
Oh, again? Okay. They used to know me here,
Oh, I know you. I just want to make sure.
I'm only kidding. Hey, Bob Traeger again. He likes to, I have on my card, I just have a card with my name and a lot of address, phone numbers, and my wife's email, because I don't do email. And at the bottom of the card, it says, "Let's talk." And I brought up to the council a couple of times. I know it's doesn't make any difference in a way that I brought it up, but I think dialogue, I've heard it from people that are 20 times smarter than I, many times in the last couple of weeks, that what we need in this country is more dialogue between the people that are existing here in the country, in the world, in the town. I mean, this little idea, it sounds like it's not really a little idea. The problem with ideas is they have to be acted on. And in order to act on them, you have to have a community of people that want to go and do it. I'm going to leave that topic right now for a second. It's just, it's an interesting topic, but you could spend all night on that topic. This little point about, I brought it up and he just brought it up, that our own families can't afford to live here. I have 3 sons. They were lucky enough to just get a house in time, you know. And I bought a piece of property on Succotash Road, and when I was buying it, I wanted to buy just 1/2 of it, because I couldn't afford and he hadn't divided it, so I had to buy it all. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, because my whole life revolves around the property to a certain extent. I was just thinking of I had my granddaughter who, in South Cakestown, she's an adult now, and she's living with an engineer, and she teaches kids not underprivileged, kids with emotional problems. She's working with an emotional problem. Well, they both have jobs, and he's an engineer, and he has a job as an engineer, and they're living in Massachusetts now, and they can just about get by with the rents the way they are now. And everything you hear now is the rents, because of what I mentioned earlier, groups are buying up everything. They're buying up everything. Now, I don't know what we do about that. I understand that it's not an easy, it sounds, well, they got a right to buy what they want, don't they? Well, they do. They do. And you know, rents have always been an issue in the whole country, but these are issues, and they need to be dealt with. And I think I can't expect 5 people up there to be able to deal with all those issues. You need help, and the help is right here, right in this room. It's all the people. People have to take an interest in what's going on in the world and not just worry about themselves 100%, worry about maybe a little bit about some of the people that are less fortunate. I'm going to quit now because I got a million things on my mind about it. But one of the things about having what's happening in South County, and I've seen it, I owned Skipstock for 43 years. I worked the business, and I didn't make a lot of money. Everybody thought, oh, where do you go in the summer? Oh, you're down in Florida? Yeah, no, it's not that easy. Anyway, that's been nothing. That isn't what I was going to say. We've got these people coming in that are, and I play tennis with a few of them. These people have some serious cash. These are money. They're people that wherever they got it, they've got it. They got it, and they're spending it. That all looks good, and it is good. But somehow you have to figure out a way to allow regular people to exist. I think we're going back to the age. When I watch some of these programs like Downton Abbey, and I watch Masterpiece all the time, and I love PBS.
You are past the 5 minutes, if you just want to...
Okay, just one more. It's becoming, to me, we're going in that direction now, where the majority of the people are going to be sort of the slaves of the more I don't know what you want to call them, the very small percentage that control the country. And I mean, if you can't see that, I mean, it's plain as, if I can see it, I'm not an economist, but I have lived 82 years, and I'm seeing it, and believe me, the human race is showing me nothing right now. It's showing me nothing. But that's a radical statement, but it's kind of, that's an emotional statement that I'm making to emphasize instead of using a swear word. I'm doing it that way. To emphasize that things are, look what's going on. What do we watch every day now? When you turn the news on, you see bodies in the street. Great.
Thank you, Bob.
Hi, Roland Benjamin. I want to just talk about everything that you seem to be talking about tonight and throughout the whole budget process has been this hyper-focus on revenue, whether it's a tax or a fund transfer or this, that, or the other thing. It's but this always revenue, and it ends up with a 1.7% increase, and you're trying to get that lower. But what you almost turn a blind eye to the spending side, which is something I've said before, a $7 million spending increase this year proposed, or 6 or 7 between municipal and school combined, is a big amount of spending. It's more than 5%. And I didn't hear a lot of talking about that this whole process. So I want to bring this kind of example to mind. When I first bought my home, one of the things I had to do here was find trash pickup. And I didn't know any better. I picked one of the bigger providers that are out there. They've changed names so many times. Assumed they were competitive, and for almost 20 years, they picked up my trash, never missed. It was fine. That's all I needed. Wasn't too worried about what they cost. But then, and their price just kept going up, didn't really notice, kept going up, didn't really notice, kept going up, didn't really notice. And then they missed a month. And then the next month, they missed another week out of that month. So all of a sudden, the value of this service that I was overpaying for without knowing it kind of comes under a spotlight that hadn't been the whole time I was here. So finally, after about the third or fourth time where they missed a week during the month, I started looking around and realized I'm paying $85 a month for this pickup, and I have a million other, not a million, but plenty of other options in town that are half that price. So I switched. Now, that's kind of a metaphor for what we're talking about with all the spending. We ignore the spending side of certain elements of our town, and they just keep creeping up until they really do have a negative impact on things. The more we spend in our schools, for example, elevates our per pupil rate that we have to pay in tuition to other districts. So we say that we can't control tuition to outside districts, and yet we do control it because it's directly proportional to what we choose to spend in the next year. I was here 10 years ago when the first funding formula impacts were being felt, and Steve Alfred and Kristen Stringfellow, who was a superintendent at the time, were trying to debate with the Commissioner of Education about how, quote, unfair it was to South Kingstown that our rates were going down, and basically laughed at us then because of what our per pupil spending was. So these are ways where our increased spending, and it keeps going up. It's going up 3 or 4 or 5 this year. I think it's 3 to 4 million, depending on which baseline you use on the schools. When that spending goes up, it just makes all these other spending line items go up. And then we split hairs about $30,000 or $50,000 or the difference between two of these funding mechanisms. And we forget we're just driving everything up out of control. So all I want to say, after I said all that, is this budget takes a $6 million spending increase. That's the wrong step to take if we're trying to really change some things here. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Roland. Anyone else like to speak? Feel free to come up to the microphone.
I wasn't planning on speaking. I'm here to represent my parents. They couldn't come. They're both seniors on fixed incomes, and I was really moved to say something, Deborah, when you...
Oh, could you just state your name?
Chris, can you hear me now? Yep. Chris Blaine. Deborah, I was just moved to speak when you were speaking about the $4 increase in the taxes. My parents bought their house for $285 5 years ago. Now they're paying taxes on an assessment of $425. They're on a fixed income. So I don't think it's fair. Like, maybe you could do a little quick math for me right now and tell me what the increase in taxes have been. $285. And now they're paying taxes on $425. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Just feel free to come right up.
Hi, Nate Barrington from West Kingston. We don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. The number 5 is a zero. Obviously, we have a surplus. That's taxpayer money. It's not a slush fund. It's not a put it away so you can get your favorite toy next year. It is fiscally irresponsible of this council to raise taxes and increase spending when a lot of the community is hurting. The fund balance, you have a policy. A policy, if I remember correctly, you said was 12 to 18%. Well, if you're at 15, then you've got 3% within your policy, within your discretion. You are creating issues rather than addressing the problem. Problem is, we spend too much money. Our schools are out of control. This council, unfortunately, I appreciate all you've done. You watch the meetings, you sit here patiently. It's a lot of work, and thank you for that. However, salaries for people that were let go, that went on, expenditures that were, those are things that should be coming out of a fund balance, not out of an operating budget. If we have a surplus, then obviously people running the departments are doing a good job. They don't need more money. And you're just, you're increasing the problem. So we need to level fund. And that's my recommendation to you, is that you look at number 5, you level fund, and you give the taxpayers a break.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Jessica Drew Day, and I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I feel that I should. I'm a small business owner. I did wedding videography here in Rhode Island for over 23 years, and you know, my business has been shut down for 2 years now. We're starting to get back on track, but we went from doing 70 weddings to 20. My increase in my house is $200,000 this year, and with the tax increase, my taxes will go up. And I'm sitting here listening, and again, many business owners here as well, we would cut expenses. That's what I did to make myself last through COVID, was I cut expenses. And I would like to hear from the council what you're doing to cut our expenses here in South Kingstown. And I know that there's ARPA money coming, and I wasn't sure how the council is going to spend that. That's $8.9 million, I believe. And if you can help this small taxpayer that has been struggling, had their businesses shut down, trying to make ends meet, support children, college, and everything else that we do have to pay for, we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Just feel free to come right up.
Dave Cote, Wakefield. Looking at the budget states a $61.7 million budget for the schools. But based on the federal money, it is actually a $69 million school spend. You can validate that as well. This makes it one of the largest spending increases ever. Over the last 5 years, on a per-pupil basis, it is average. The school budget is averaging over 7% for the last 5 years. During this same time, student performance has been going down. In an analysis done by a community member, Doro, he compared 254 communities in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. I was surprised to see that out of the 254 communities in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, we ranked 155. That's pretty poor, considering we probably have the highest per pupil spending. So I think it's hard to make changes at the last second, but I think we need to manage the budget better, and our community deserves better than being ranked 155. Further in the analysis, I've been looking at the current numbers. It looks like the municipal budget, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it has increased over 8% from last year to this year. Is that true? That's a pretty high spend. So I think in this coming year, I don't know what we can do today, but every single day we need to look at our expenses. And you're hearing that people can't afford to live here, but every single day we need to look and improve performance in South Kingstown. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Feel free to come right up.
Doral Beasley. So my wife's been on me about cleaning up so we have this like great room in the back of our house, so it's like the TV place, the dining table's over here, and my little office is in the other end. She's been on my case for months to clean it up. So I was cleaning up a couple days ago, and I came across this. Narragansett Times, Wednesday, January 2020, subcommittee to look at per pupil cost in South Kingstown. That's when, Mr. Collins, that's when you put yourself on that subcommittee to find out how come our per pupil costs are so high. I don't actually ever remember seeing a report come out of that. So one of the school committees, the school committee earlier this year, they set goals for the year. One of the goals was to create an FY 22-23 budget that supports teaching and learning while maintaining fiscal austerity. So the fiscal austerity is the part that bugs me. And this is why. So we have basically the same number of students as East Greenwich does, 2,500 or so students that we'll have in the fall. But their school budget for this coming year is $45 million, and ours is $69. Even if you take off the $3 million worth of federal money, it's 66. So that's 66 from 45. That's $21 million more for the same number of students. I've asked this question so many times that you're probably sick of hearing and sick of seeing me, but how is that possible? Well, here's how it's possible. One of the reasons it's possible is because over the last 4 years, while you have held the tax rate of $14.45 for 3 years, and now this year going to $10.95 with the same amount transferred to the schools, our cost per student went up from $21 million to $23 million to $25 million to $27 million. So you held the tax rate, but you didn't control expenses. I had a two-hour meeting with Ms. Pellerin, school district CFO, last week, and we were going over what the future's looking like here. And I'll give you a little preview. Over the next 2 years, unless the funding formula is totally rewritten, this town is going to lose $900,000 this next year from state aid, and over $1 million the following year. And it's because the two cost drivers, the two main cost drivers, are your cost per student and your declining enrollment. So we're going to go from 4.8 to 3.9 to 2 point who knows what. As Mr. Cote said, our students are not performing anywhere near what they should be. We have the second smallest class size of any school district in Rhode Island. We have 87% of our teachers are top step. It doesn't make any sense. But yet you never, I'm talking about the three in the middle. Here's why: because you two guys in the end, you get a pass this year because you're not incumbents. You had the option for the last 3 years of telling the school district to go back and reduce their budgets and recalculate them on a per pupil basis. You could have taken $1.5 million off 3 years ago. You could have taken $2.5 off last year, and you could have taken $3 million off of this year. But no, you didn't. So, and the cost savings when you close a school, there's two cost savings. When you close the physical plant, less electricity, less gas, oil, whatever. That's a one-time savings. That only comes off on year one. You'll never see that savings again. The real cost savings comes from staff reductions. And we need, if we want to fix our schools and not put that money, that $6 million, whatever we're going to need per year for 25 years, to keep that from going on the backs of the taxpayers, that number, that $6 million, has to come off of our school budget permanently over the next 4 years. So when the buildings are ready, the buildings are completed, the renovations or a new school, high school, or whatever we do, that you have the money to pay for it, so it doesn't go back on the taxpayers. Because
I'll pass the 5, if you could just sort of wrap it up.
Yeah. Okay, so the last thing is this. If our school spending was the same as East Greenwich, there's $18,000 a year. So is Barrington next year, $18,000 for the top two school districts in Rhode Island. $18,000, Barrington, East Greenwich. Ours is going to be $27,000. That means we pay 50%. Our school budget is 50% higher than the two best school districts in the state. And yet you sit there and you don't do anything about it. Because if we had East Greenwich's school budget, our tax rate wouldn't be, you wouldn't be looking at $10.95, you'd be looking at $8.30.
Hi, Peter Stelgis from Wakefield. I came here tonight only knowing that we have a spending problem. I don't have the figures. I fully agree with what I've heard from this last gentleman, that this isn't about the range we're talking about. Our expenditures in the school system is so much higher than any other system, and our performance is not as well as those others. So, again, I didn't think I'd get up, but if you think half the people that are sitting here agree, or if 90% of them agree, unless somebody says something, you don't know. But performance counts, and spending is just far too out of step.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Just feel free to come right up to the microphone.
Hi, Elle Nordsey, Wakefield. We're in this weird pickle because we keep talking about where we need to cut, where we need to, I think we should gain revenue, look at all the options, but we don't really have all the facts and figures in front of us. Wakefield parents, we're obviously aggrieved because we're closing the school. There's plenty of people behind me that agree with that decision. But we've asked the school committee for transparency in making that decision, and in my search for more transparency, I've been attending subcommittee meetings, including the budget subcommittee. And there are people putting so much work into finding out what the real picture is of our spending, but we're not giving anybody time to actually complete that work. We have huge legal bills on the school committee side, and we're hiring consultants that we're not really giving time to actually do their job. So for me, that would be wasteful spending. I'm not advocating for cutting the school budget. I think children are as important as the elderly to take care of because both sets of populations are the most vulnerable in our community. I am also a homeowner who is feeling the same tax crunch. You know, and my income has gone down, and inflation, as we have all heard, has gone up. I think tax code can be fixed. I think zoning and planning has a lot to do with it. And then there's this political element at play. And I think that we need to be balanced when we look at it and not just let one, you know, like it's pretty obvious there's certain schools of thought in politics that would rather not see any more tax money spent for whatever different reasons. I think if we're going to spend the tax money, we should be thoughtful and careful, and maybe the school committee needs more oversight on that. We've asked for how are they making their decisions, and we've been quoted thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, different people asking different questions and getting the same carbon copy response. And there was all this outrage years ago about where is the transparency, we got to fix things, and now it's just like the other way on the pendulum is like, where is the transparency and how come we're not fixing things? So like these budget decisions are being made when we don't really have all the data, especially, you know, not really knowing what is the surplus going to be at the end of the year. Like these are all the different parts that we need to know. And so this, you know, and I understand that there are certain time increments that have to be met, but there are so many decisions in this town that have both at the same time been put off and then just jammed through, and nobody really can even figure out how did we get into this mess. How are we going to climb out of this mess? How are we going to protect the elderly and the children in this town? We need to figure out a plan for generating revenue, but we shouldn't throw our most vulnerable populations under the bus. And it is, you know, my generation, middle class, that's going to be bearing the brunt of these tax increases. I mean, my value went up right along with everybody else's, and I know we're in this for a long haul. But I appreciate the thought being taken into this, and I also really want to say that I agree with Councilwoman Kelso's sensitivity to our credit rating, because I have seen other municipalities and internationally where it creates a huge problem if your municipal entity does not have a good credit rating, or if they see it sliding. And as she said, you know, they're planning on putting forth an application for the facilities in September. We're going to need money. We're going to need money from the bank. So please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Monique Chartier. I stand here to echo the comments of Nate Barrington and Roland Benjamin. There's a real issue here with spending, and it is simply not justified, mainly by the school, the outputs of the school and the size of the school and the student per pupil spending. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Vera Levitt of Wakefield, and I appreciate the sentiment of everybody in the room. We also have to pay taxes, and I don't think anybody is happy about that. But I would also like to say that, you know, we are going to celebrate 300th anniversary next year, and I want to be, you know, proud looking back in 20 years to the year 2023 and say, like, this was a great year, and that's not the year where we were trying to save the money and close the school. And also, if we are trying to save the money, you know, like for me, and I you know that I talk about not being happy about closing the school in the heart of Wakefield, but busing the children and not knowing how much we are going to spend, how much money we are spending for busing, transporting children out of town. is not ideal. And I see what Boston is doing. They bought 10 electric buses and for the kids to go to school. And I would like to see the vision. Like, what are we doing to decrease the amount of high school students studying in Narragansett? Because we are paying all that money for them to study there. So what do we do instead of just talking, we need to decrease the budget, we need to decrease the budget? What are we doing to keep these children or these young adults in here? So what's the vision? What grants are we applying for to do sustainable school or to tap into this green energy? And how are we using the resources that are possibly open? You know, what do we do? And also, who is represented tonight? Like, how many mothers do you have here? You know, you have a sliver of the audience here, but, you know, like, if the single mom wants to come to this meeting, is she going to pay the sitter? And that's going to cost her like $50 for the evening. So how much, you know, how much information are you getting from these people? And who is missing at the table? Who is talking and who is not? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Just feel free to come on up.
Hi, my name is Margaret Carlson. I go to South Kingstown High School, and a lot of this money stuff is going into my head, but that's not the point. The point is, I've been hearing a lot of people saying we're overspending on schools, but I'd like to bring up the point that this year at SK, we had no paper, and we still have asbestos tiles in the first floor hallway. Most of my teachers can't afford to live in SK because it's really expensive and they don't get paid enough. So, and I also know this is a lot to do with like the school budget and other higher state stuff that we don't really control. But we were talking a lot about, people here were talking a lot about trying to increase the number of students we have in SK schools, and I think partially the reason we have so few students or the student rates are going down is because, again, our housing rates are going up. Families can't afford to live here anymore. Like, my parents broke up, my dad had to move out of SK because he couldn't find housing. And I think a lot of that has to do with, well, first of all, I don't really know. If we're overspending on schools, how is it that our schools can't afford paper for their students? Like, where is that money going, I guess would be my question. There's obviously some kind of disconnect that needs to be fixed, and I guess that's my major point, is something's wrong with the system and it needs to be fixed, I think. I don't know how to do that, but yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience like to speak? Just come on up. All right, one last shot here. Anyone who hasn't spoken would like to speak, come on up right now. Considering none, we're going to entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, the motion passes. All right, do I hear more discussion on item 7B here?
I will make a motion to approve the final budget with option, I'm sorry, it's not in front of us anymore, 3A as presented. Is that an adequate motion, Mike? Do you need more than that?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion?
I want to just, address some of the things that we've heard tonight. I think a lot of focus is on the schools, of course, which we hear. And we spend a lot per pupil in our system. I think we face a number of distinct challenges here in South Kingstown that many other municipalities don't face. We have huge territory to cover, so we spend a lot on transportation. We've been really negatively affected by the state's funding formula. despite all that, we've been trying to tread water. I feel like the schools have been cutting to the bone. One of the reasons you might not see paper the way we'd like to. And still we're spending a lot per pupil. And maybe we're not getting all the results we want to see either in terms of test achievement. But I think when you're looking at test scores and student achievement, you see a lot more of a linkage to the demographics of the students who are in the schools than you do about the spending per pupil. So I think it would be interesting to look at who those students are that have chosen, or the parents who have chosen to move their kids out of our schools, maybe because they feel like they're no longer getting the really top-notch education they were. Because those are probably maybe a lot of the high-achieving kids in our schools. And so when you remove them from our classrooms, that's when you might see our test scores go down, for one thing. Just a hypothesis, but something that might account for it. I don't think that cutting spending in our schools is going to cause test scores to go up. I certainly think that's illogical on its face. I don't think it's impossible to see us spend less per student and see a growth in our student achievement, but it's just unlikely. So it's important to keep those things in mind. I think looking forward into the future as we consolidate the school system and we get a little closer to some of those other schools where they don't have so many neighborhood schools, we can start to see some more efficiencies there. And we look forward to that, but it has been, it's been something we've been trying to do for years, and we just haven't found the community will to settle on a plan that'll do that yet. Hopefully that'll change in this next facilities process. I want to just talk about, the general economic well-being of our community, which is, it's in good health. When I first joined the council, I think our tax rate was north of $16 per $1,000 of assessment. We're talking about a tax rate now of under $11. So what that speaks to is the growth in wealth of our community. We're $2 billion richer as a community as of this last assessment. There are people at the fringes who aren't realizing all those benefits, but that doesn't negate the fact that it's true. So when we're policymakers up here, we can enact policies to try and help out those people at the fringes who aren't, lifting with all boats, as they say, or rising with the tide. And that's called progressive policymaking. Cutting taxes, in general, economists will tell you this, just your common sense will tell you this, will only accelerate that wealth transfer from the poorest in society to the richest. That's what happens when you cut taxes. It happens at the local level, happens at the national level. It's A plus B equals C. It's straightforward. So I think we should, as a council, enact policies that help people who are struggling with their bills. But that's like specific policies to help specific people. Our tax code is a general tool. It's designed to make sure that the municipality, which is just us all together, has the resources to be able to provide services that we all rely on. Roads, fire, police. These are services that, for the most part, I never use. Many of us hopefully never have to use many of these services, but we need them to be there as a social safety net because there are people who need them. And that's why we have taxes. They're basically the entrance fee to living in a civilized society. The more we decrease that tax rate, the less services we're going to provide here in town. And I think years and years of leadership from people like Steve Alfred, very fiscally conservative leadership in this town, has put us in a good position. We have a good bond rating. We have a healthy unassigned fund balance. We have fully funded pensions, an OPEB that's fully funded. Many of these things are the dreams of other communities, so we should be proud of that. I'm proud of the work that the municipal and the school side have done in preparing this budget. It's a level-funded request from the schools again. Looks bigger because they're getting some grant money. That's a one-time thing. Their budget is not going up because of that. So when you look at South Kingstown, I don't know if we have these figures, Terry, but when you look at the tax burden per capita that exists in South Kingstown, you compare it to our neighboring communities, we are lower than all of them. We have one of the lowest tax burdens per capita in the whole state. That speaks to the efficiency of our government. And I think that's something that we can all rally behind and support if we become aware of it. And that's despite the fact that we spend so much per pupil on our schools. So, we need to know the facts. And I think we need to set tax policy looking at the aggregate of community health, what's going to maintain our bond rating, what's going to allow us to continue to have a strong fiscal policy in this town. And so I think a 1.72% tax increase is justifiable. It's not a level funding, but we're increasing some services that are critical. We're talking about establishing a new EMS shift at a new station that's going to be able to protect some of our aging citizens so they can, age in place in their homes. It's an important goal that we've had for years, and I'm proud that the town has been, pushing forward on it. I think also the police force is doing community engagement officers, which I think is a great new program, and I look forward to seeing what they do. I think a program like that will actually save the municipality costs in the long run. So we need to make wise investments. I don't think anybody's up here looking to frivolously spend taxpayer money. We're up here trying to provide services that the town can be proud of. I think that makes South Kingstown one of the best places to live in the state, and I look forward to keeping it that way.
Thank you, Abel. Any other discussion? All right, I have a few thoughts here. So obviously the main things that the council does in enacting the tax rate and crafting a budget is we have to be mindful of not allowing tax increases to the residents that tax them out of their home, but we also have to be mindful that we need to allow the services this town provides and that the people are getting those services maintained over time. I don't support any radical reductions in a budget because I don't believe a contracting budget will satisfy the objectives of the town. We have a priority to provide those services to all citizens, including those who support a reduction in the budget. I think we also have a fortunate thing here in SK. One of our biggest financial assets is this undesignated fund balance, which sits at approximately 15% of our total operating budget. And that allows us to have great flexibility in doing things like capital expenditures, taking on debt, and things of the like, using that as sort of pledges against any debt that we'd like to use. And it also gives us flexibility in the time of emergencies to pull monies from that funds when we need to. We caution against that, but we know it's there in case of natural disaster or things of the like. Now, as I said earlier, I think a starting point of this budget for tonight is 3A. We enacted option 3 as the preliminary budget adoption in March. We directed the town manager to identify additional expenditures within department budgets to see if any more savings or reduced expenses could be yielded. She came back to us with $120,000, $60,000 of which will not impact services. That's the starting point for me for this budget tonight. Having additional information that we expect the current town budget that we're operating in now to yield a conservative $90,000 surplus, and I say conservative, and I mean that it is likely to be more than that. I think there is potential to use monies from that surplus and pull it over to reduce the tax rate another cent here, just to be mindful and work as much as we can to get there. I would like to ask all members if they would be considering that we do have conservative anticipated $90,000 surplus to be yielded at the end of the current year that we're operating in now. Is anyone open to using $60,000 of those monies, which is likely to be higher than the 90, to apply into this budget?
Yes. Rory. Yep. So I am as well. I just wanted to point out that Terry sent us a memo on Tuesday
on the typical, the range of year-end transfer surplus, the surplus at the year end for the last, from 27 forward, ranges from 3 million to last year 900,000. So last year, the year-end balance before the transfers was 896,000. They're telling us now they're anticipating 91. All of a sudden, you know, if you can get your budget down that tight, you probably need to buy a lottery ticket because no one budgets to the penny in municipal government. So I would anticipate that 90,000 is much higher. So I'm very comfortable. I'm comfortable using all the 90 right now because I'm looking at this right here. Last year was 896. 2 years ago was $3 million surplus. And I know it was COVID, but I'm saying that there's no way that we're going to hit the penny at 90,000 just based on the trends. So I'm comfortable using some of the surplus because I don't want to take away 1.2 and then put back in 700,000, even if we appropriate it to other things. It's not fair to the community. It sounds like we typically overtax them and then slush that fund away. And we know that there are several reserve funds that are built up, and they're just other funds that the town can use to address expenses. So I'm on board because I think the community has asked us multiple times to be mindful of their experiences of the last 2 years.
Thank you, Deb. I'm going to address that question to Abel Collins. Considering that we anticipate a conservative surplus generated in the current operations of the budget of 90,000, would you be willing to use 60,000 of that, which is likely to be higher, to use into this budget? Get this sent on one more.
I will amend my motion to...
Is that we're at 4?
You're talking about 4B. If that's what you want to do, and let me rephrase it for you if this is where you want to go. So the motion would actually be to approve public hearing item 7B as modified by option 4B under general fund reductions.
I'll withdraw my original motion and make that motion.
I'll second.
4B.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion?
I just want to clarify that the transfer, surplus transfer, that the numbers that you're speaking of, Deb, those include the OPEB transfers that are budgeted, right?
Additional. The OPEB was 419,000 last year.
Right.
1.269.
Right. I just want people to be aware that some of those surpluses are budgeted already. They're not just total surpluses. Anyway, that's really all I have to say. I mean, if we're going to tap the undesignated fund balance for another 60,000, it will bring our tax rate down to 1095. It doesn't help the people whose property values have skyrocketed. It does not help them. That's a different issue, right? So really what we're talking about, again, I'm going to put it in dollars and cents for everybody. If we go to 1095 on $450,000, your tax bill is $4,927. If we leave it at 1097 or 1096 without tapping, right, it's $4,932. It's $5, right? So that's, again, what we're discussing here. These tax rates in no way help the people whose property values have gone up 50%. That's just a fact. The property values in South Kingstown have skyrocketed. We know that. 30% of the people in town will see a tax reduction at this rate, but 60%, 65% of the people in town are going to see their taxes increase. This doesn't touch property values. All we're doing here is setting the tax rate and 60% of the people are going to see an increase, regardless if it's 1095 or 1097.
Any other discussion?
Just curious why we wouldn't use all 90,000 when we typically have $900 to $3 million surplus for the last 6 years. Just curious why.
Well, I think we should give some weight to our financial experts who tell us that they anticipate a $90,000 surplus. I don't think it's going to be anything vastly or substantially different from that, but I do think it will be higher than that, maybe double that at max. I don't think it's going to be anything further than that. And I think there's an importance to budgeting a surplus so you have flexibility and monies to work with, so you're not just doing a flat revenues equal expenses and we're just going to operate it, and not factor in an account of things can fluctuate, contracts change, accidents happen, costs go up, things like that.
Can I just say something about that? Emergencies happen, and that's what this fund is for. In fact, we have an item on the agenda in a few minutes that we have an emergency spending from Matunic Beach Road because of a failure in the water drainage pipe retention, and the bill is $226,000, right? That's an emergency authorization for spending. So we need that undesignated fund balance to be able to say yes to this tonight, so that the residents of Matunic Beach Road will continue to be able to get home and get back to work. That's what those funds are for. It's not a slush fund. It's not we're overtaxing people. We are saving. It's a savings account for when we need it, like we do tonight in a few more minutes.
So I thought the town manager was using the road improvement fund. We are not taking the $200,000 from the undesignated fund. That's not where that is.
But all that does...
So you're telling people that that was the emergency. There's money in the road improvement fund for that. We're not going into the undesignated fund for that emergency. So that's
But the road
it's not accurate, Deb.
The road improvement fund is a savings account, right? It's another savings account.
The town has several savings
That's
accounts.
right.
I would
And there's
ask
reasons
community,
why we have
you
those
have that many. The community doesn't have that many places to go. They're not going in their couch to get coins for something, and they're not going in their car to get coins. They don't have that. We have multiple funds, and you just presented to the community that we were going to use the undesignated fund on the Matunic Beach Road emergency. That's not true. We're not going to that fund. We're going to another fund. So
We are.
don't
We're going to the road improvement reserve
Trying to
fund.
scare
That's
people.
where we're going. No, you mentioned that we had numerous funds. We do. There's a reason for it. That's all I'm saying. Emergencies can happen.
But you
bring
presented
us
to the
back
community,
now? Kind of
one
veering
second.
off.
She presented to the community that $200,000 was coming from the
Deb, it
undesignated.
was an analogy. It's been corrected. I'd like to bring us all back to the item at focus here, which is we have a motion
Thank
to adopt option 4B. It's been seconded. We're in the area for discussion right now. I'd also like to say this. I think moving forward with unity, hopefully in a 5-0 manner, is big for this town. We have a new town manager who's going to take effect early May. The school department has a new superintendent that's going to take effect, I believe, May as well. But we've seen clashes of the past. We've seen divide in this town. And I think this shows a great sentiment to the community that the council is united if we can get behind a budget with a 5-0 vote. And based on the reasons that I've expressed, I'd like to get behind 4B, and I hope everyone up here can as well. But at this point, we have a motion, we have a second, we're in discussion. Is there any more discussion?
Just real quickly, regarding the last point, there's some dissent. We use surpluses to put into those reserve accounts, so it's very fungible, the discussion. The fact that we're taking $226,000 out of reserve fund that wasn't intended for that purpose because it is an emergency holds true. So something we would do if we had like a $200,000 surplus at the end of this year would be to recapitalize that capital reserve fund. So in a way, you can both be right, if that helps. I just think it's important to think about it in a way that understands one another.
Thank you, Abel. All right, if there's no more discussion, Susan, can you take the roll?
Councilwoman Bergner?
4B. Aye.
Councilman Collins?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kelso?
Aye.
Councilwoman Rose?
Aye.
Councilman McEntee?
Aye.
Vote is unanimous.
All right, that motion passes. That's going to bring us to communications. Item E, a resolution adopted April 11, 2022 by the Charlestown Town Council in support of House Bill 2022 H8055, an act relating to waters and navigation, Coastal Resources Management Council, that provides a definition of the recognizable high tide line for the public's rights and privileges of the shore. Terry, if you just want to sort of give us a little bit more information on this one.
So as I had mentioned in the work session, this is a resolution adopted by the Charlestown Town Council in support of House Bill H8055, and it basically delineates or explains the high tide line for public access, and the language is 10 feet landward of the high tide line in the legislation. As the council knows, there's a active CRMC and public access activity throughout the state. This has been a subcommittee, I believe, through the CRMC and legislature to come up with language for somehow solidifying the high tide mark. We know there's been challenges with public access and where can the public actually traverse along the coast. And so the council can choose to support it, place it on file, refer it to the Waterfront Commission. I will note that the town has many public access points and rights-of-way along the coastline, and we try to maintain those through the Waterfront Commission and the Harbor Management Plan so that people are aware of those and that they stay accessible.
Do we have a motion?
So I think that we all as a council have tried to, or at least we've talked about prioritizing shoreline access. I would like to support this resolution because I think it does that, and I would hope that you would join me because we have.
A second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just say I think it's good to get some clearer definition into the law, so I hope this bill will pass. It's been causing far too many issues, not just in our town, but around the state, so yeah, I'm happy to support this.
All right, anyone opposed? All right, seeing none, that motion passes. It's going to bring us to item G, which is a letter dated April 12, 2022, from Henry Thayer, Vice Chair, concerning the Economic Development Committee's review of the Conservation Commission's proposal to amend the town's plastic reduction ordinance to ban nip bottles. Henry, I see you're here. If you want to come up. Oh, Henry's not here. Dave, you want to come up? You can speak.
Hi, David Flanders, Conservation Commission. Thanks for giving me the time to speak. I just wanted to, be grateful to the EDC for seeing the logic and the economics that we presented to them. But as of this point, with their being supportive of this thing, I would like to make a formal request as Chair of the Conservation Commission that we now schedule a public hearing on the issue.
So we do have legal counsel to assist here, some points he had made in the work session.
Right, so as I advised the council earlier this evening, I'd like them to refer this to my office to prepare an in-depth memo on this, because it is my opinion that state law preempts an individual community from adopting a ban on nip bottles because it's tied up in the Class A liquor license legislation. So I really want the ability to do a deep dive into all of that and get back to the council with what their options are. So for purposes of this evening, if the council could refer this to my office, and for the next meeting, we'll have a full memo and we'll share it with everyone.
That's great, thank you.
I'd like to make that motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, Mike, in your research, if you determine that, it's not something that we can do lawfully, we can obviously advocate for it to be done at the state level.
Oh, absolutely, at the state level, because there are other communities that are very interested. It's not just South Kingstown, so there's no question that that will most likely be an option, and we'll try to also see what other communities are interested in saying.
Yeah, so if that can be part of your memo, that'd be great.
I just also wanted to comment that when we did pass the original ordinance in 2018 to basically prohibit the dispersing of single-use plastic bags, we did that on an individual town level, and other people followed our example. So it would be our hope that if we could do this, as an individual community, that other communities would follow. And our experience is that these things trickle up from below, that the state is very slow to get. They haven't yet maybe they did just last week, formally pass the single-use plastic bag ban. I know, but the other ones are held up in committee at this point. So I'm just saying, if there's any way at all that we can do this as an individual community, I think it's going to just build momentum the further we go along. So, thanks.
Just appreciate your advocacy on this issue a great deal. I feel like raising the awareness to the community, you start to notice how much other litter is on the roads. I mean, I'm hopeful that this can snowball into people being aware that there's a lot of trash around, that we need to do our part and stop littering and also pick up other. Thank you.
And the sheer numbers are just through the roof, and though someone else here in the Bill McCusker is going to address that.
Still here.
It's absolutely eye-opening and crazy.
I can't unsee the nips. I can't unsee. Once we had this, I do my own 2 streets around my neighborhood all the time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Bill McCusker, Friends of the Saugatuck. And just give you some quick numbers. We did a survey starting with 8 volunteers in South Kingstown from December 27th to March 27th, 90 days. In 8 days in South Kingston, we picked up 9,378 nips off our streets and on our river. And it took on a statewide initiative where with 20 volunteers, we picked up 20,000, or actually took 21,000 at this point. So, we report back.
Thank you, Bill. All right, at this point, we have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, the motion passes. It's going to bring us to item I, which is a resolution adopted April 13, 2022 by the Burrillville Town Council in opposition to several bills pending before the Rhode Island General Assembly concerning gun control.
Motion to place 8I on file.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes. It's going to bring us to item J, which is an email dated April 13, 2022 from Joanne Esposito, Chairwoman, requesting to present the 300th Anniversary Steering Committee's plans for the town's upcoming anniversary next year. Joanne, come on up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for this opportunity to present. On behalf of the 300th Anniversary Steering Committee, I'm joined tonight with Joe Veely and Ginny Paul and Margaret Carlson, who you heard earlier from South Kingstown High School. We have a PowerPoint that we put together. The first meeting was November 30th, so in 4 months we've been very busy, and we have an ambitious plan. It's an outline that I'd like to show you tonight that will give you an idea of the projects and events that we have planned, and we look forward to your approval and blessing to move forward. Right now you see the graphic. We put a lot of effort into the graphic design. We tried to look at the seal that you have above you. That was the focus of the committee. And we had the graphic design to take that look. The committee felt that the ribbons had to be on there, the 300 needed to be prominent, and then to have the 1723-2023. We took out the Washington County words to emphasize the town of South Kingstown, and then Rhode Island. We have that in a blue background as well as a white lettering background, and it can be used in all the different marketing materials. We also shared that with a graphic designer, Graphic Expressions, on their input to finalize it and got their blessing on this would be something that could be reproduced for usable bags or T-shirts, commemorative coins, and a lot of the things that we hope to sell. Underneath that, if we could go to the next slide, Terry. Celebrating the spirit of South Kingstown or celebrating the spirit of SK, we want to use that as the tagline in various marketing depending on what the medium is. And this is a presentation to the Town Council today and for the attendees tonight. The committee is comprised of about 30 volunteers, and we have 4 honorary chairs. The committee consists of our wonderful interim town manager, Terry Murphy, and without her help and guidance, I don't know if we've gotten this far, so I really want to thank her publicly for all her help and guidance. We have South Kingstown High School students. You've heard from one tonight, Margaret Carlson. Aiden Hurley is the other one. University of Rhode Island is represented, South County Health, and we have town-wide representation who are all volunteers, and we've been meeting bi-monthly. We have the 4 honorary chairs: Native American tribal member Sandra Pates, Reverend Wallace Hazard, retired Rhode Island Supreme Court Justice Gilbert Indalia, and military war veteran Joe Tiger Patrick. The mission statement that we put together is to organize and plan the celebration of the town's 300th anniversary milestone, to plan and implement multiple commemorative year-long programs, projects, and events. We want to highlight the town's rich past and treasures. We want to celebrate the achievements of its people. We want to create a legacy of memorable, philanthropic, and creative opportunities for its residents and visitors alike. Approximately 15 commemorative projects include the graphic that I showed you earlier, garden boxes. One of the council members mentioned it would be great to have flower or garden boxes that we took seriously, and we went to the high school, and the carpentry teachers are right behind it, and we're pricing it out for 15-inch or 17-inch by 17 boxes made of a nice cedar, and we hope to have them sold. It includes the students. It's something that you can buy and have for the town's anniversary. Historical digital timeline for South Kingstown. Right now there's no central portal for the town's history, and fortunately we have the town's library director Laurel Clark and Jessica Wilson spearheading that with several members of the committee, collecting a lot of the town's history and putting it in together. It's called SK Timeline, JS Timeline, sorry, and it's it has like the year, and then it also can include a photo of something that was, you know, a milestone, Great Swamp Massacre. So we're not only just starting with the colonial period in 1723 when we were incorporated, we're going back to show our Native American history as well. So that was one of the big components when we got together. We want to focus on the real history of South Kingstown. Public art installation. We want to include, similar when you go to Italy, to Europe, there are monuments, there's statues, there's things that memorialize and are things forever. And so we want to have something to memorize our wonderful 300th year anniversary. Townwide bulb planting. We hope to plant blue and white irises in the fall, this fall of 2022, to spring in the bloom in the spring of 2023. We hope to order numbered anniversary coins. The first 100 would be numbered, and the other 200 would not, and we hope to sell those. I understand that they're a big collectible, so we're hoping that you'll want to buy one as well. We plan to auction off number 1. The 300th anniversary is also looking to buy merchandise like reusable bags I mentioned, and T-shirts that we can sell off. We would like to have a sponsor. for all 2,600 of our South Kingstown students to have a T-shirt. So that alone is $11,000. We'll get to the budget. It would be great if we could get a sponsor so all the students could have a free T-shirt. So that we're looking for something like that. A series of history tours and open houses, bringing out the history. A 6-panel brochure on the Narragansett Pier Railroad. One of the committee members, he just moved to South Kingstown, and he just has a love of the railroad, and this is his baby. And it's amazing how he's taking this to the next level in producing a brochure on the railroad. It'll be wonderful for history. One of the things that's not on here that you've probably heard about is the Kingston Signal Station and how our committee is supporting, looking at that, endorsing something that we move forward on to maybe make it a museum, a railroad museum in South Kingstown to begin for the anniversary. And this is a tourism attraction right down there near the railroad station now. You're moving that old signal station, renovate it to become a museum, maybe bring some railroad cars similar to, you know, the old kids show, Percy and all those, the trains. But this would be a great tourism attraction, bring revenue into the town. And there isn't anything around here, so that could be something really big, and our committee is endorsing that. And it all, in a lot of ways, generated from John Desmond and Murray Gates, so I commend them a lot. We also want to continue on the Memorial Bench program, and we would customize it with the 300 in any honor of families who would like to do that. The bike path, again, this is the Narragansett Railroad. We'd like to install some informational panels. There's nothing about the history of the railroad on there. It's amazing. There's, if you go along the bike path, and John Desmond, who's, you know, the king of this whole project, even talked to a couple people walking along the bike path, and he said, you know what this was? And they didn't even know it was a railroad track, you know, so just things like that. So we hope to install 3 just to bring out the history. They're $1,500 each, and we're hoping that this could be an opportunity for a sponsor. Monthly 300 speaker series. Every month, we hope to have virtual or an in-person, or both, possibly at the high school, to bring out the history of South Kingstown and bring it all out. You know, the plantations that this town was I wouldn't say founded on, but there were a lot of plantation owners, and there was a lot of slavery, and we want to bring all that out. We want to bring out the history of the Hazard family, our Native Americans, and agriculture. And one thing that we just secured was the author of someone who wrote on the 1938 hurricane. So we secured that for September 21st. 2023, which is the anniversary of the 1938 hurricane. So that's one of the big things we just did. A photo contest is something we might do with the South Kingstown High School, and creating banners and flags to go around the town so that every village has a 300th flag, and something certainly in front of this building to kick that off too. Then we have about 35 projects, 25 of them new, and I have to emphasize here that one of the things we looked at when we were putting the plans together is we don't want to just piggyback on an event that's already existing. We wanted to create something that we could also continue, so it's the first annual. So that was something, and we had a focus that we wanted the events to be memorable and philanthropic. So all of these things that I'm just going to mention is we had that in mind. There was a lot of thought put into all these things, and the committee is very busy trying to get plans and details put together on this. We plan to kick off the speaker series in January, being cold. We thought it'd just be a virtual ceremony or something in the high school where safe distancing, because we're thinking COVID safety. In February, we thought to have a kickoff with a bonfire right at the Saugatucket Park. The South Kingstown High School does a theater performance in February, so we were thinking maybe It's a Wonderful Life in South Kingstown, playing on that movie. So instead of Bedford Falls, South Kingstown. The Girl Scouts Day, we have one of the members, his wife is a Girl Scout leader, and they're gung-ho about helping us with National Women's Month and the Girl Scouts and celebrating that way. Restaurant Week, bringing out all the restaurants and businesses to have maybe the 300th dessert, the 300th drink, so that'd be kind of fun, some kind of contest. We hope to have the South Kingstown High School students exhibit their artwork in the McGrath Judicial Complex. I mentioned how Judge Indalia, one of our honorary chairs, one of the requests he had was that he would like to see more exhibits at the courthouse, and we took that to heart, and so we're working on that for him. They would be exhibiting their artwork, 90 could be in the 3 hallways from March through June. Then Earth Day, we would just enhance that with a great big cleanup of all these nips that are all over the place, hopefully get rid of them all, and especially the fact that they're not recyclable. I don't know if a lot of people know that. That was a big learning experience for me. We look to the Little League and the soccer, maybe helping them with their opening days, but we don't want to spread the committee too thin. We're trying to look at what ways we can impact the most. Going on to May, the Memorial Day Parade, how can we enhance that? This May and the Veterans Day Parades, we hope to have a banner saying coming soon or stay tuned for the 300th anniversary. The Peacedale Centennial, I just put this here as a placeholder because the school is celebrating its centennial in 2023. We found after researching and collaborating with a lot of groups, there are other anniversaries that we're going to be piggybacking on. The 300th parade, we found after talking to Steve Stewart, Terry Murphy, the co-chairs of the parade, that it's important that we have a 300th anniversary parade separate from the 2 Memorial and Veterans Day parade. And that is going to be planned for Saturday, June 17th, and we have our first committee meeting tomorrow night to go ahead and move forward on that, so we're real excited. And then post-parade, we're looking to have a festival as well. You've got all these people in town. Let's have a nice festival afterwards. Kingston Village Festival, we're looking to possibly have an unveiling of that well that got knocked down. So hopefully that's an unveiling we can do next year. Then we're looking into the summer, July, the 4th fireworks, and how can we enhance that. Movies on the Green, we understand there's a new movie screen that was purchased by the town and would like to have 4 movies, 2 in July, 2 in August, that piggyback on the concerts on the Green. So we would follow with the movies. We have a wonderful URI intern who is a film major, and she's going to help us do oral history. So before the movies, we're going to focus on several of the villages each night as like a preview as they're closing down the concert and getting ready for the movie. And it might highlight Matunic, East Matunic, Green Hill one night with some oral histories and a video and some background music and highlighting that, and the next one Peacedale and Wakefield and things like that. So that's really exciting that this intern is taking charge of that. The Kingston Chamber Music Festival, it's actually their 35th anniversary next year. I should have put that on there, I apologize. The South Kingstown Town Beach Party, we thought we needed to do something at the town beach. Tamaquag event, it's their anniversary, or their opening of their new museum. Unfortunately, it's not going to be next year, it'll be in 2024, but they would love to participate. We don't know the plans yet, so it's a placeholder for September. It could be in May, but we're just putting it somewhere for right now. Wakefield Art Festival, we're thinking to initiate the first annual, and our first meeting is next week to talk about it, working with the Herod Gallery and the South County Art Association, so that's pretty exciting to get the art festival going. We should have one down here. There's no reason why we can't do this, and it will be all around the Saugatucket Park, have some music and things, so we're working to get ideas for that. Golf tournament, we're not sure. There's a lot of work that goes involved in a golf tournament, and so that's still to be determined. Wakefield Oktoberfest, that's a wonderful event that's been growing every year. We've all worked it and have participated, and it's fabulous. We'd like to maybe enhance it by having a scarecrow contest around the Saugatucket. maybe having scarecrows that represent the various nonprofits and civic groups, so a Girl Scout, a Boy Scout, different things that we can bring out the various nonprofits. We thought, how can we include them in a giving day or a neighbor day? And they, approaching some of them, they didn't want to have just a booth and stand behind a table. So maybe the scarecrow opportunity could be something that they would like. And then after that, we thought to do a South Kingstown for the first ever trifecta. And we're calling it that because we thought, how do we include maybe a beer fest and also the history and culture of South Kingstown and bringing out the Saugatucket River and also fitness. So we're calling it a trifecta. We're not really sure exactly where that's going to go, but it's all in the works. Then we have the Veterans Day Parade and enhancing that. And we've learned that the South Kingstown versus North Kingstown football game for Thanksgiving is going to be at URI. They flip-flopped this year so that it will be next year at URI. So we can have a halftime ceremony and hopefully we can go out and have you all be part of a speaking program or something. And then lastly, the finale, we don't have anything planned yet, so any ideas we welcome from you, but we would like to have some kind of closure or finale, maybe a bonfire again, if that's something that takes off and does really well, why not? Why not just play it again, Sam? So that's what we're thinking. Ideas for student collaboration, that's a big thing that we're really including. We met with the school committee maybe about a month ago. Mr. Pilata was fabulous, been connecting us with John Rappert, one of the assistant principals at the high school. We're meeting this Friday with like 15 teachers to talk about from the music, the theater, the carpentry, the photographer. So there's a lot of ideas where the high school students can get involved. And it's a wonderful opportunity that Margaret Carlson even got up tonight. It was her first time ever coming to a council meeting. So it shows you how something like this, you never know where it can spark someone. So I'm so delighted that we have two fabulous high school students on our committee. We also want to have additional collaboration with URI. They are going to be helping possibly the marching band participate in the, it would have to be the Veterans Parade only because the students coming in for school. South County Health, how can they participate? We're still working on that. Narragansett Tribe, they met with us at one of our meetings recently, and they're honored and thrilled, and they want to make sure that anything that they bring forward is with authenticity and with prayer and with a lot of thought. They thought maybe to do some powwows and to build a wigwam, and they have a lot of other ideas, and they're reaching out to their elders and want to come back and tell us what they'd like to do. Tamaqua Museum, like I said, they're interested. We're not sure what they want to do yet. Friends of the Saugatucket, we hope to reach to work with them on doing some events around the Saugatucket and the history of that and its impact to SK. And in addition to the South Kingstown Rotary, Elks, and the Lions Club, how can they participate and help with sponsorship as well? We want to get all the civic groups and nonprofits and their help and their advice. Then the Boy Scouts, they're celebrating their centennial, so here's another anniversary, and we're waiting to hear back what they would like to do, but we hope that they participate in the bulb planting. We hope that they help with just setting up for events and a lot of other things. Clean up the Earth Day. The Veterans Foreign War, we are hoping that we can get them involved as well. And the Kingston Chamber Music Festival, I mentioned that. We're waiting to hear back what they might want to do. Instead of always playing at URI, maybe they come right down and play on the Saugatucket or at Peacedale or the Green, the Village Green. And the South Kingstown Farmers Market, we're hoping that they move from the marina down here right into town to make it a little bit more of an opportunity for people walking in high visibility. And we have a media plan where we're hoping to reach out to the Narragansett Times, South County Independent, doing letters to the editor where we can get more volunteers and get people excited. Social media, we're hoping to have a Facebook page, the town website. Right now we've got some basic things on there. A kiosk, we're working hopefully with Belmont to have some type of bulletin board between Belmont and the old Rite Aid on that wall where it can announce this upcoming event, this upcoming project. And then bookmarks, banners, flags, and flyers we're hoping to have around. We're hoping to work with the Chamber, of course, and the library in their newsletters to send out announcements. Rhode Island PBS, we've already confirmed that they'll do an Our Town segment on SK in 2023 or show in 2024 if they film in 2023. And then all the event listings that opportunities have free opportunities. The budget, right now we're at about 160,000. 100,000 of that is the public art installation. Terry Murphy has submitted a wonderful grant opportunity from Rhode Island Commerce. It's called Placemaking Initiatives, and they have a place for public art installation, which is the perfect opportunity for this 300th anniversary. So we're hoping to get that 200,000 and put it towards this art installation that has maybe a 7-foot bronze or steel structure to commemorate this wonderful anniversary and show the spirit of SK. Right now, we know that we have 10,000 in our budget from the town. Thank you very much. And we're hoping to get, and we have the other 20,000 for the fiscal year 2023-2024, and or 22-23. And I am asking as the chair tonight that I would really like to have your support going down the line when we're building all these wonderful things for the town to celebrate this milestone, that we might need to come back to you, depending on our fundraising, which is the next section, that we might need more support from the town. This is a great public relations opportunity for the town, so we might need to come back. But we have a fundraising plan. We talked about I mentioned the grant for the Rhode Island Commerce. We're hoping to reach out to the legislative representatives we have in state and local and look to see if there's any opportunity that way, and RISCA, of course. We're also thinking to do a car and or a boat raffle, and we wanted to make sure that you were okay with that. We did get permission from the town solicitor saying there was no reason not to, similar to the 4th of July Bristol Day Parade, where they have the town's blessing to go out and solicit for funds. So we might want to do that car or boat raffle. And we're looking for funding from the Rotary, the Elks, the Lions Club. I know that the Rotary, they met with us in the very first meeting, and they were excited to support us, so we were really happy about that. We also have a committee for fundraising, and we have in the works drafting a plan and how we can go out to institutions and businesses to ask for funding. So I want to thank you for this opportunity. I know it was quick, and I apologize. I know that there's a lot of people here, and so I welcome any questions you might have. I have to share one wonderful note, though. When I had written a letter to the editor about asking for volunteers, there was a gentleman who wrote back saying, oh, you might want to do commemorative coins, which we are doing. You might want to have a parade, which we are doing. And he said, good luck, and I reached out and said, thank you so much for your ideas, and, would you like to be on the committee? And he just said, no, I'm actually from North Kingstown. I am the chair of the parade up there, Bill Penoyer. And he said, I want to let you know that your neighbors to the north are there for any assistance that you may need. And that just was such a positive response that I had to share it all with you. Thank you. Any questions that you might have?
Thank you, Joanne. A lot of great things in store. I'm very excited. Gable?
Yeah, just a couple thoughts. I think in terms of coming back for funding requests, the American Rescue Plan sort of foresees a lot of this type of work, and honestly the supplementary budget has a lot of the same sort of ideas, and I think it fits very well into economic development, so that's a potential source. So keep that in the back of your minds. And then I would say just a few more nonprofits that might be able to contribute. Contemporary Theater Company, Courthouse Center for the Arts, Pump House Music Works, all good people who might be able to add into some of those events.
Thank you.
Thank you for this presentation. It was very informative. I really enjoyed it. I almost wish that we had scheduled it like as a separate work session so that we could advertise it as such and get people really involved. So maybe that's something we could think about doing again or getting this presentation up on our website, because I think other people would enjoy seeing what you have planned too. It's excellent. Just a little bit of feedback. You have a lot going on with the high school kids. I don't know if you've ever seen Tiger Patrick engage with the elementary school kids about the Korean War monument, and they eat it up. I think that even the younger kids would really enjoy taking part in this. So I don't know if there's a way to engage them.
Absolutely,
but I
Ms.
think
Rose.
that'd be
Yes,
awesome.
just a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I met with the K through 8, and I apologize, I didn't say that, K through 8 principals, and how can we get them involved as well?
Awesome.
Just to your point, exactly, because that's the ages you want to get them at, to talk about slavery and the history of South Kingstown and writing about the monuments and what this anniversary means. And so that 50 years from now, when they have the 350th, they're going to say, wow, I was here and I did this project on it and I had this essay to write and it was in the paper. So I'm hoping that the Times and the South County Independent has a section for the 300 that we can always just send the information there, and every week when you open it up or every month there's a section on it, and get the students involved. And so there was great discussion at that meeting, and the other offshoot of that is the parents, because there's a very active PTO for each school. And so I am waiting to get a date to meet with the PTOs of all the different schools, and how do we get the parents involved. And so we're looking forward to that feedback, and I'll be happy to share that with you in the future.
Thank you so much.
Joanne, any interaction with Theater by the Sea? There's a lot of history there, right? So I didn't know if anyone's reached out to Theater by the Sea.
Not yet, Deb. I will put that on
Pretty
to-do
good
list.
venue for some presentations, for some talks, and they have a lot of downtime in the spring, so it might be a viable option.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
And I was just thinking, have you involved like the land trust, maybe as a location for events, or some way to, like, you know, we're going to explore all the trails in town to see like our beautiful community from that angle. I don't know if you want walks and rambles as one of the things that you could do on your own. Like families could, you know, challenge you to walk 7 trails, or just to get the flavor of SK, to maybe have a bucket list of things to do as a family, like go to the town beach, go to a concert on the green, like things to do this year in the 300th, so that maybe get a passport or something, like some gimmicky thing.
Absolutely. We'll have to, you know, put our heads together on that. So thank you.
To help you.
Well, thank you, Joanne. You've done a great job presenting here, and I give you credit as well as the committee. You guys have accomplished a lot in the short time that you've been meeting, but this is going to be a great event, and I personally look forward to it. So,
Thank you, and you're welcome to come to any of our meetings if you'd like. Thank you.
great, thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
All right, so do I hear a motion on this item, Jay?
Motion to accept item J, sorry. 8J.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes. It's going to bring us to item O, which is a copy of a letter dated April 7, 2022, to the House Municipal Government and Housing Committee from the Hopkinton Town Council expressing their opposition to House Bill 6676, an act relating to taxation, levy and assessment of local taxes relative to the assessment of renewable energy resources.
I'll make a motion to place 8O on file.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second, any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes. It's going to bring us to item 9, which is comments from interested citizens. Anyone in the audience, feel free to just come up. We'll try to limit you to 5 minutes, but if you could just identify yourself first.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Moss. I am from the Matunic Roy Carpenter's Beach area, and I have some...
Sorry, I'm going to recuse.
I have some things some handouts for you folks, if that's all right.
Yeah, come on
I'll
up.
review
Bring 'em
up
right up.
there.
Oh, there's 5 of them here.
It's nice to see you all again. 2 weeks since the last meeting, I look forward to receiving communication back from the interim tax assessor, but in the meantime, I appreciate your work tonight with the budget, and Councilwoman Kelso, I appreciate your comments regarding the fact that it does little to address the property assessments. I wanted to bring this to your attention tonight because I've been talking to folks in other areas of the state. In particular, if you look at what I've given you tonight, Warwick, Bristol, and Woonsocket, although they're on a different tax cycle, I do want to point that out. They're a year behind SK, so they have an option that we don't have available this year. They've gone to the General Assembly and they have requested a delay to their assessment. What I do want to point out to you is the reasoning why they've done this, which is what I brought up 2 weeks ago, is that in the highlighted areas, especially on that first page, significant increases in housing demand fueled by low interest rates and the COVID-19 global health pandemic have caused erratic, disproportionate, and volatile shifts in property valuations. We further see, when you look at the article that goes along with this, statements in the highlighted sections from their tax assessor, who has over 30 years of experience, who's talking about there's a significant possibility that there might be changes in the housing market that would not have severe impacts on its homeowners. So the whole purpose of their going to the Rhode Island General Assembly is quite simply to take into account the fact that we're seeing fluctuations as we've never seen before, which is much similar to what I said to you all 2 years ago. So the reason I'm bringing this up is to see if you all, along with the tax assessor, the interim tax assessor, can think creatively about what ways, obviously this is not an option, which I'm well aware of, what are some creative ways that the town can look at the assessments that will be given back specifically from Vision Appraisal to look at, given the market implications of COVID-19, specifically the supply and demand in certain districts of SK, where we know that there's been different impacts on the market valuations. Is there something that the tax assessor's office can do to mitigate the disproportionate or the disproportionality in the assessments that are coming through? Because you see 3 other places in the state that are completely withholding, or they're asking to completely delay their assessment due to COVID. So we have demonstrated here, and quotations from a 30-plus year tax assessor saying that this is something that is so out of line with normal considerations for tax evaluations that they are asking the state to completely withhold it for a year, because they have the ability to do that, because they anticipate that it will be returning to normal. What we do see is that within the state, especially along the coast, we are seeing these differences, and they are due to COVID-19 based on these experts' evaluations of the market and what's going on here. So I would ask that you speak to these other experts within the state to see what would they recommend, what are some other creative solutions. You all are a very creative group, and I know you've got over 17 years experience yourself. What are some other things that can be done to at least look at the proportionality of the impact that COVID-19 is having within the state? I totally get our taxes are going to go up, but when some areas are going up 265%, or as a group we're going up 165%, whereas others are going down percentages across the town, the inequity is what really bothers me. I don't have a problem paying more taxes when it's fair, when it's equitable. But when it's inequitable, that's when there are challenges. Thank you for your time. You guys are so patient.
Thank you. All right, I know we have the interim tax assessor in attendance tonight. If he'd wish to address the tax assessments or would we have to add that to the agenda, Mike?
If you want to have that discussion, you can, but you need to add it to the agenda.
Motion to add it to the agenda.
We have a motion. Hold on, Bob. One moment.
Second.
So we have a motion.
I made a second.
Oh, we have a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, so now we have an item for discussion, which is allowing the interim tax assessor to come up and talk about the assessment valuations over at Roy Carpenter's.
Council President, if I may, there is a memorandum with the town manager's report from David Doltz on what he's done so far. He'll give you his version of it, but you do have it in your packets as well.
Welcome, David.
Good evening. I do like Martha. I just want to let you know. She questioned me about that. I'd just like to address Carpenter's Beach, if I may. Having been appointed the interim assessor on February 22nd, I could say I'm familiar with South Kingstown, but I don't really know South Kingstown that well. I was the assessor in Narragansett for 3 years, in North Smithfield for 3 years, and I was the assessor collector in Portsmouth, Rhode Island for 17 years. I also did 2 years working with Vision Government Solutions. So I'm also a certified general real estate appraiser. So I know real estate, and I've been around a long time. One of the things I did do when I arrived was I took a ride down to Roy Carpenter's Beach to look at real estate. That's what you have to do. You have to look at real estate. And I can take anyone down there, show them the 13 sales that I looked at, and then say, well, what do you think that one's worth? And you'd have a pretty good idea. So that's basically what I did. My presentation is, or my memo, addressed 13 sales that were MLS sales. Okay, so when you want to estimate market value, you want to make sure that your sales get market exposure. They're arm's length transactions, buyer and seller, undue by, any adverse conditions. There were 18 sales altogether in Roy Carpenter's in 2021. So I chose to look just at the 13, okay, because typically those are the types of sales that really tell you what's going on in the market. Not that the other 5 wouldn't, but that's typically what's done. And I presented those to see if the assessments were realistic relative to what they had sold for. I'm not going to go into what they were assessed before, what they were assessed for, what they sold for previously. That's all public information. We're talking about what their value is on 12/31 of 21. Okay, and we deal with in the assessing business, we deal with an ad valorem tax, which is a tax based on the value of the property. Okay, what's the value of the property? 12/31 at midnight. I think the values based on my memo are realistic. And if you look at those, they're pretty typical. As far as days on the market, 0 to 203. There was one outlier in that, but 30 days, 8 days to 30 days. In this market, typically properties have been on the market for 30 days. Or when I say typically, in 2021, the kind of the phase we're going through now. And we have gone through many of these phases before. I can remember looking at 30% appreciation rates per year in a town in Rhode Island. This isn't uncommon, okay? Going back to 2007, 2008, if you remember, there were so many foreclosures in short sales, specifically short sales. Short sales almost became the market norm instead of typical financing. So that's what you recognize. And that, where are we from 2007? We're much higher. I don't know what, I don't know what's going to happen in this market, but typically for reevaluations, they look at 12/31 of the year that they're assessing, and they try to represent a fair and equitable value, which will determine what their taxes are and their prorated share of the town or city's financial burdens. I did meet with, I had a preliminary meeting with the residential section of Vision Government Solutions. I'm going to meet with the commercial division tomorrow to review their final values, and they'll be presenting reports for the town based on what their sales are, what their assessed values are, and what their conclusions are. So I will have more after that point. And then at that point, if we finalize the values, the final notices will go out to all residents who either had a hearing and got a change or didn't get a change, or properties that were changed upon our review. Some properties did get changed without a hearing, but those are mistakes, errors, those kind of things, not that many. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have. As far as I'm aware of the cities and towns that are delaying their reevaluation, I don't know. I haven't quite been able to understand why they're doing that, but we'll find out whether it makes a difference or not. I personally, are we going to go back to normal? I don't know, but what are your taxes going to be on your property? I mean, I don't think they're going to be any drastically different than they already are, whether the values go up, down, because all values pretty much follow, even though it's a dynamic market, all values do follow a general trend. So we'll find out more about that. You have any questions for me?
Thank you, David. Any questions for David?
So there's still people who have filed their appeals with Vision. There may still be some revisions to those valuations. So some people may see those change. When would we expect? Or is that?
Yeah, they're probably going to. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, they're probably going to get the notices within a week. They're not. The law says that they shall hold hearings, so it's really just a hearing with the reevaluation company, and it's important because residents know their property better than anyone, and you can understand that. So it's important to relay that information to the reeval company. Number one. Number two is, if you hear, concerns from certain areas, then you can say, well, do we have some issues going on in certain areas, and then we can address those. So they're informal hearings, and then once the bills go out, then the Rhode Island law kicks in, and it says 30 days from your first tax payment, you can file a formal appeal with the assessor. The assessor shall give you a decision, and then you can appeal that decision to the Assessment Board of Review. And that's universal throughout Rhode Island. So.
All right, any other questions for David while we have him? Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, come on up.
So my neighbors might hate me for this. There were a handful of cottages at Roy Carpenter's Beach that were not given the Roy Carpenter's Beach cottage designation by Vision Appraisal. There are about 6 of them, though I feel that after I say this tonight, they won't be 6 any longer, and they'll be given the same thing. Those 6 cottages did not feel the same 165% average increase that the rest of us did, which is part of this inequity that I'm talking about. How is it that you can walk around and apply the same calculation of those 13 sales to 370 of us and not those other 6 of the 376 properties on there? You can't do that in good faith and say that it applies to all of these but not these 6. It's just because someone walked around and arbitrarily said, I think we got them all. But you missed those 6. And in looking at those 6, they gave an honest appraisal. And to the other 360, or the other 370, I'm sorry, they didn't. So there is something at play here that is unfair. And this is what I'm asking folks to look at. And you can't stand here and honestly say either, with all due respect, sir, I do value your years of experience. When I came to you 2 weeks ago, if you included in the average, which is skewed even by one number, if you included all of 2020 sales, it brought down that average by $14,000 plus. So if they held it, if we had come to you sooner and asked you to hold it at the 2020 rate, We wouldn't be talking about an average of 14,000 less. We would have been talking about the entire number less. So I beg to differ, because these rates will come down, and we're already seeing it come down. You talked about the interest rate earlier for the bonds. It's going back up. The reason so many people purchased, and there was a wait list for the first time in 50-plus years for these cottages. There's never been a wait list for these cottages. Demand has never been like this, is because interest rates were low and people wanted to get to the coast due to COVID. So this is a different market. We've been hearing it all night. Inflation is up. This has been the tune of the evening. So I beg to differ. And I would like answers as to why those 6 that flew under the radar, those lucky people, are going to have a different rate than me when they are my neighbor.
Thank you. Tax assessor, hopefully you can take some of this into consideration. You don't necessarily have to respond now, but if you'd like to. This is not sort of an exchange between the public and town employees, but
I'm just trying to understand. So there's 376 properties at Roy's, and 370 of them, the average assessment was 160,000 more, 165% more, and then for some reason did Vision miss them? I mean, my own experience with Vision, I don't really understand the whole process, but like I said, telling people that their house looks nicer is not a scientific assessment either.
This is the first I've heard of this. But the internet is, when we put all the field cards on the internet, this was one of the ways that we caught a lot of those, because if your assessment was, if there was an error on your assessment and it was, let's say, 60,000 less than all your neighbors who had similar houses, it's very unlikely that, I'm not saying you, but someone would call up and say, geez, my property is 60,000 less than my neighbor's, and it really shouldn't be. What we have is, we have Joe next door says, oh, I looked at Jim's house, and he's got the exact same house, and he's 60,000 less than I am. What's the deal? And we said, well, we'll look into it. You know, it could be an error, it could be a lot of things. So that's how we catch the low ones. I mean, I'll check on the 6, but...
I can tell you that somebody said that, and the Vision Vision said to them, your house looks nicer. You have the same square footage, you have the deck, you have the shed, and they said, yours just looks nicer.
Yeah, that wasn't brought to my attention. The thing at Carpenter's Beach is you have cottages that are selling anywhere from $200 to $400 per square foot. I mean, you look at the sales. You tell me if that's, or someone tell me if that's telling you anything differently than it's telling me. Okay? You can, regarding the 2020 sales, we could use 2020 sales. But how much is real estate going up from 2020? You wouldn't sell your house for what it was worth in 2020. This is an escalating market, and they're all escalating. And believe me, it's happening all over the state. I don't live in South Kingstown. It's happening everywhere, and more down in the southern parts of the state where the quality of life. People are seeking out quality of life.
Right, but you can understand why that community is upset, because they're just summer cottages that they can only live in for 6 months when they're paying the full assessed value of something that they can't live in for 6 months.
Yeah, but it's very, I mean, they were all a little different. When I was in Narragansett, there was a host of seasonal communities like that, April to October or May to October. I mean, there were over $1 million sales in some of those neighborhoods. $1 million for seasonal living.
These people don't have water. They don't have running water in their homes. So
I know. I'm trying to get you to understand they're all different, okay? Yeah. But they all have amenity. They all have proximity to water. Some have use of the water, okay? And so none of the other examples that I'm familiar with, the people don't own the land. They're either condominiums or they're similar to cottages, privately owned cottages on leased land. I can give you the project if you'd like to see the projects. I can give you the projects, but I went through two reevaluations in Narragansett. I know what these properties are, and you don't see them in the northern part of the state. You only see them along the shoreline. because that's what people like.
David, maybe you and your office could work with her and her concerns in identifying maybe potential disparaging treatment toward the people in Roy Carpenter's and present that to Vision Appraisal. Maybe that's a possibility?
Yeah, I mean...
You're working closely with them, is that correct?
Any information that I receive, I pass along to Vision Government Solutions, okay, to let them review it, get their feedback on it, and then make a decision on it. We're getting kind of late in the game now, because we've already had the hearings. We've had over 1,000 hearings, over 100 commercial hearings, okay, and we're trying to get those changes made, and then the notice has gone out so that we can kind of start to firm up the tax roll. So, but I'm always open to people's concerns. This is the first time I've heard of this 10 or whatever properties that are misrepresented.
All right, well, we're happy it's come to your attention now, and hopefully you can work together with her and her concerns, and hopefully that can yield results, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I always take the time to explain the process to people, because a lot of people don't understand it. So I'm happy to do that.
Right, excellent. Great. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bob, now is your time.
I think we might need
Oh, wait, hold on, Bob, sorry.
Oh, no, that was...
This is a great conversation that's going on here right now, and it's late, and you all want to go home, and I don't blame you. So do I. I'm beat. Anyway, just brings to mind when I bought my first little thing down at Wackimo Park for $4,000, a little shack down there, and I lived down there, and we called it Poor Man's Paradise, and it was. And then somebody bought it. He's dead now, so I won't even mention his name, but that's one part of it. And the other part of it, a part of it was sold. Now there's where my house was located there, and I actually raised it too, so I could see Block Island. Little shack. Right now, there's not a house in there that isn't worth over $1 million. Okay, so what does that all mean, you know? We're in a radical change situation, and change is difficult for everybody. Unfortunately, if your property is worth more, like my house on Succotash Road is probably doubled right now, but if you want to stay in South County, what's the sense? You don't want to sell your house, do you? If you think it through, you realize, I love it here, I want to stay here, forget the money, so you can make $500,000, so what? You know, anyway, everybody's different, everybody's got their own agenda. I was going to get up here and say two things. One of them was I liked your summation of the congratulations, you passed the important thing, right, the money, and your explanation of it, Mr. Collins, was excellent. I don't have my hearing aid, and I forgot to put it in, but I got what you said, and I got it, and I think it was very well put together, and true as complete. Everybody said good things, but I mean, that particular presentation. The other thing I wanted to say is that you're on TV, and I watched it 2 weeks ago because I wanted to come, and then I fell asleep in the chair or something happened to me. Then I woke up, I said, oh, I'm going to... So you were the best show in town 2 weeks ago. And I watched just about all. I think I stayed for the whole thing, even on TV. That would have been tougher tonight, though. I don't think I would have lasted. I'm surprised I lasted through it tonight. Even though it was all good, don't get me wrong, but some things I'm not that interested in. But I am interested in people and their needs. And I know that's what you're interested in. And I don't envy your position that when I say that, I mean, I don't envy these decisions you have to make, because some of them aren't going to be good for people. Because you don't know, there's no easy way to handle it. There's no easy way to handle it. Some people, a lot of people, are going to be helped by all of this inflation over here of prices and everything, and some people are going to be hurt. That's all there is to it. There's no, but you got to keep your eye on it, and you got to look at it in a broad perspective, because this isn't just here. The same thing's going on up in New Hampshire where I go in the winter, is here. It's exactly the same thing. You can't buy a piece of property near Mount Washington area right now. They're having bidding wars for the condos, and they're not cheap. Anyway, that's it. I'm glad I came. You're always, it's worth it. I've always said, more people should do it, and more people should stay to the end, too.
Thank you, Bob.
I'll be quick and brief. Bill McCusker, Friends of Saugatucket. Just want you to know that this weekend we had our Earth Day cleanup. 5 days, 4 groups. We picked up over 2,000 pounds of trash off of our streets, out of our rivers and our roads. 4 groups from the Friends of Saugatucket, South Kingstown Land Trust, Ministerial Road Preservation Association, and Ocean Recovery Citizens Alliance is what the groups that participated. Ministerial Road, this is the 31st year picking up trash off of South Kingstown. I would hope that the council find its way to recognize them for the amount of years that they've been doing this kind of work. And the South Kingstown Parks Department, I can't say anything better about them. They were great. They took away all of our trash to Johnston. Something needs to change with litter. It's a big problem in this town. It's only going to get worse. I hope that someday we can get together as a group and find out what we can do to try to reduce this, because we just picked up a minute amount of what's out there. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate all the work. Joe, come on up.
Good evening. Joe Veely from the Southern Rhode Island Chamber of Commerce. I couldn't leave tonight without thanking Terry Murphy and her staff in the interim position. A wonderful job. The town owes you a debt of gratitude, so thank you and welcome to Jim. Best of luck, and we'll be in touch. Everybody have a great night.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else like to speak tonight? All right, we're going to move on to the town manager's report.
I'll make this brief. I did have the memo from our interim tax assessor on it. That's been discussed already. The council is well aware that we are moving into a transition period. I'll be working with our new town manager, Mr. Manny, to move forward and make it as seamless as possible. And we have a number of leadership positions that are posted. We've got a finance director position, police chief, assessor. So we are working on those currently and hope to have those filled within the next couple of months. So unless there are any questions?
Thank you, Terry. At this point, I would like to acknowledge you, Terry Murphy, for all your hard work and the months that you've put in as interim town manager. I think you've done a fine job. I've been pleased, and I appreciate the sort of relationship we've built in working together. And you've stepped up hugely for the town, and I think what you've done has been superb. So nice job, congratulations, and don't be a stranger. We hope you come back to some meetings.
Thank you.
I would just like to echo those comments. Terry, thank you for your dedication and your commitment and your patience with us as we worked our way through the process to hire the new town manager. So thank you very much.
My privilege. Thank you for allowing me.
And for getting us through a pandemic. This was not an easy time for anything I can imagine. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
All right, we have no appointments tonight, so that's going to bring us down to new business. Item 12C is a resolution authorizing an award of bid to New England Building and Bridge of Providence, Rhode Island for the Victoria Lane and Montucket Road water tank anchor bolt project at an amount not to exceed $261,000, including a $20,000 contingency, and as further detailed in a memorandum from the Public Services Director to the interim town manager dated April 19, 2022.
Motion to approve 12C.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries. It's going to bring us to item D, which is a resolution authorizing an award of contract to Connectivity Point Wholesale Way, Cranston, Rhode Island, in accordance with State of Rhode Island Master Price Agreement Number 419 for installation of an enhanced security system to include electronic access points at the Neighborhood Guild, Senior Center, Peacedale Office Building, and Highway Department in an amount not to exceed $24,317, inclusive of all labor and materials, and as further detailed in a memorandum from the facility superintendent to the interim town manager dated April 20, 2022.
Motion to approve 12D.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries. It's going to bring us to item E, which is a resolution authorizing an award of contract to National Water Main Cleaning Company of Canton, Massachusetts for Matunic Beach Road stormwater pipe rehabilitation in an amount not to exceed $206,579, including a $20,000 contingency, using funding from the Road Improvement Reserve Fund, and as further detailed in a memorandum from the Public Services Director to the interim town manager dated April 15, 2022.
Motion to approve 12E.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes. That's going to bring us to item F, which is a resolution authorizing an amendment to an award of bid originally granted on June 26, 2017, and subsequently amended on May 14, 2018, April 22, 2019, and August 11, 2020 to T. Miozy Incorporated of North Kingstown, Rhode Island for fiscal year 21-22 pavement reclamation and overlay from an amount not to exceed $3,365,243 to an amount not to exceed $4,271,353, as further described in a memorandum from the Public Services Director to the interim town manager dated April 18, 2022.
Motion to approve 12F.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes. That's going to bring us to the end of the meeting. Thank you for everyone's time.
We have executive session.
Yeah.
Yes, and next we need a motion to enter closed executive session.
I'll make a motion to enter into a closed executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A2 to discuss matters pertaining to litigation RE KSL-SK Inc. versus Jean Bouchard WC 2020-0139 tax appeal, and pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A5 to discuss matters related to the acquisition or lease of real property for public purposes or of the disposition of publicly held property where an advanced public information would be detrimental to the interest of the public regarding ministerial road property.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes. We will now be entering executive session. Thank you for everyone's time tonight.